What an honor to be here, and I'm so thrilled to see this room so packed with folks. We have been working on talking about getting prepared for this day for months, and so it is just such an honor to finally be here. Thank you, Sarah. I love an introduction which starts off by talking about me as a mom. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna just kick us off by first of all, thanking all of you for being here, thanking all of you for the commitments that you have already made, for the discussions that we've already had. I think the partnership that we are envisioning from this gathering today, I think is gonna make such a tremendous difference all across the country when it comes to protecting our water. So grateful for you. I also wanna begin the meeting just by acknowledging that we stand on the ancestral lands of the Anacostan people. And just let us take a moment to pay respects to their elders past and present. It's my distinct privilege to introduce Chair Jonathan W. Smith, Chairman of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. Chair Smith has traveled far to be here. I'm really grateful for his participation today, and it's just such a pleasure to have him back at the White House. We were here together recently celebrating other administrative initiatives that I think are important for protecting water, and grateful to have him here today. So, Chair Smith.
Yakmaitsky, Tukti Karuch, everybody. I'm gonna open up with a few words, here this morning. Good to see everybody. Tribal protocol, I wanna ask our elder, Chair Lewis here, if he can open us up today. Before that with a song, and then we'll say a few words. Again, this morning we thank the Creator, Pusha, our Lord, for water. We come together talking about water, and can't help but think of the old days, when we're able to fish at Celilo, where we come from, our people, and you were able to. Their stories our elders talk about being able to take a can from the scaffold and being able to lower it down in the river and take a drink. And the water was clean, but you can't do that nowadays. The development that's been happening with our water on the river. So Shush is important for us. It's one of our first foods. We give thanks for water. Without water, there is no life, Creator. So, we come together for this and talk about the struggles we've had in Warm Springs, with access to water, and how our water system's been crumbling over the years and how we're starting to address it. Working together with IHS and EPA and rebuilding our water system. There's times when our water and our elders and our folks who in our community couldn't access water. Our pipes are breaking, our water treatment plant is down. We're dealing with climate change and algae in the water, and we're dealing with all these things that are contaminating our water, and it's something that's been been on our minds a lot lately, and something that we're working to help fix, and we're trying to reach that milestone, of saying, okay, we can fix this for our people. We can tell our children and future generations that it's going to be safe to drink, but with climate change happening, with all these PFAS, lawsuits going on, all these different things happening in our water systems, all these microplastics and things that are happening, it's really concerning. So we're trying to get over that last part of saying, okay, let's get these resources, let's start fixing the system for our people, so our kids can, feel safe when they take a drink, get a cup of water and drink from it. So it's really important. They used to talk about our utilities used to say, you don't know how important water is until you go to get a drink from your faucet, you turn it and nothing happens. Or you go to flush your toilet and there's nothing. or when there's a drought and there's a lot of fires that are raging, you realize how important water is. So, water is life, and we just want to give thanks on this day. Thanks, everybody, and it's good to see you guys.
Thank you both for really helping to set the stage for this important meeting. I always feel like when I start off by an opening from the tribes, it really does help kind of focus us and anchor us on what's important and why we're here. So I'm just grateful for having you both here. And as I said, thank you for traveling, because you didn't just come down from down the street, so very much appreciate that. One of the things that I think that that we all share in this room is a recognition that water is really the lifeblood for us all. And I will say that one of the things I've learned from both Chairman Lewis and Chairman Smith is just how much they personally and the folks that they have often brought to the White House with them have embraced that notion kind of more with a greater level of reverence than I think we may see in our day-to-day. So I'm just grateful for the partnership that we've had with the tribes on a number of issues, and water being a really critical one. I'm grateful to also just have the chance to kick off this water summit, and to do it during Earth Week, and to do it after we've had a number of really, I think, wonderful and impactful announcements over the last few days that will really protect water. And I just want to hit on a couple that I think are really important. Last week, the Department of Interior announced 2 rules. One, the protection of more than 13 million acres in the Western Arctic, and a second, yes, please. And a second, the Bureau of Land Management's public lands rule. And yes. And both of these are so important because they give the federal government new tools to protect our water. Since day one, President Biden has been advancing the most ambitious water agenda in history. And it's an essential feature of the president's climate change, conservation, and environmental justice agenda. His first week in office, the president established the America the Beautiful initiative, our country's first national conservation goal, committing to conserve, protect, and restore at least 30% of the nation's lands and waters by 2030. So far, the president has protected or restored protections to more than 41 million acres of lands and waters, including some of the most treasured places, the Boundary Waters in Minnesota, Bristol Bay and the Tongass National Forest in Alaska, the areas surrounding the Grand Canyon in Arizona, and the Everglades in Florida, to name a few. President Biden is also the first to use the power of his office to prioritize the restoration of wild salmon and steelhead in the Columbia River Basin in true partnership with tribes and states. We supported a landmark agreement that will help secure sustainability of the Colorado River system. And all of these things are actions that really reflect the Biden-Harris administration's vision for clean water. Working together in partnership with tribes and states to protect, conserve, and restore the nation's waters for the benefit of the communities and species that depend on them. And it is a vision that the vast majority of folks in this country believe in as well. But it's a vision that is at risk. There are competing views out there on what the vision for our water protection should be. There is a vision that really prioritizes industrial and corporate ease over protection of our water. In a court decision last year, these forces found their biggest and most devastating success. The Supreme Court decision in Sackett versus EPA is the culmination of years of work to undermine federal Clean Water Act safeguards. But be clear-eyed, those forces are now targeting state clean water and wetlands protections as well. By some estimates, the Supreme Court decision may remove federal protections for as many as 63% of the nation's wetlands. Across the country, around 117 million people get some or all of their drinking water from public drinking water systems that rely on intermittent, ephemeral, and headwater streams, the kind of waters that may be most at risk following the Sackett decision. So today, we take a bold action forward. As part of the American the Beautiful initiative, the Biden-Harris administration is announcing new, bold national goals to restore, reconnect, and conserve 8 million acres of wetlands and 100,000 miles of rivers by 2030. And we'll work to meet these goals together. We are also launching the America the Beautiful Freshwater Challenge, where we are joining with tribal nations, states, cities, land trusts, mitigation banks, private landowners, and businesses to commit to striving further on clean water efforts. Together through the America the Beautiful Freshwater Challenge, we will make commitments more resilient, we will make communities more resilient to extreme weather and other climate events. Our actions today will help enable collaboration essential to delivering clean water for all in this country. We are in a fight for clean water, but it's a fight that we can win, and more importantly, it's a fight that we must win. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce the Department of Interior's Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Water and Science, Michael Brain, and a great partner in our effort to deliver clean water for all.
Good morning, everyone. Chair Mallory, thank you so much. Our tribal leaders, really everyone, thank you for being here today for what is a very, very important day. And happy Earth Week, everyone. As was mentioned, my name is Michael Brain, and I have the honor of serving as the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Water and Science at the Department of the Interior. And it really is an incredible day to celebrate transformational progress on our efforts to expand access to clean water all across our nation. At the Interior Department, we know that having modern water infrastructure is not only crucial to the health of our families, it's also important to the economic opportunity, job creation, and our efforts in responding to the intensifying effects of climate change. We're fortunate that through President Biden's Investing in America agenda, the Bureau of Reclamation has $13 billion in new resources to advance these efforts. And I can assure you we're working diligently day in and day out to get these resources into the hands of communities that need it most and as quickly as possible. From rural Montana to the southeast deserts to the mountains of Washington state, these once-in-a-generation investments are doing a lot of things. They're connecting rural and disadvantaged communities to clean, reliable drinking water supplies, many of which have been waiting decades for clean water to flow from their taps. They're supporting innovative water reuse and water conservation measures across the Colorado River Basin as we work to build drought resilience for communities throughout the West. And they're safeguarding tribal water rights in honor of our trust and our treaty obligations. At the end of the day, this is really what it's all about. Clean, reliable water, which is essential to every person, to every animal, and every ecosystem across the country. And we need to do everything we can to protect and invest in it. Our indigenous communities in particular have been left behind for decades, including when it comes to access to clean and reliable water sources. That's why today this administration, under President Biden's and Secretary Deb Haaland's leadership, is committed to bridging these gaps and ensuring that tribes receive long overdue support and resources they deserve. In fact, we've proudly committed a historic $1 billion from the Investing in America agenda for tribal clean drinking water. As part of that effort, the Bureau of Reclamation is investing $320 million to expand domestic water supplies for tribal households, and we're accepting new project applications right now for this program. It's not all, however, and we're pleased to announce a significant new stride to ensuring essential water and sanitation infrastructure throughout Indian country. We've signed a new memorandum of understanding with the Indian Health Service to accelerate the completion of sanitation facilities for Native American and Alaska Native-owned homes and communities. This really is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about an all-of-the-government approach. This is leveraging unique capabilities of both agencies that will enable us to deliver tangible progress on the ground that will support tribal communities for generations to come. And I have no doubt that the work like this that we're doing in partnership with communities will have a lasting impact. Thank you all so much for allowing me to be here today as we celebrate so much progress that we've already accomplished and so much more to come. I think we'll take a brief pause. Sorry about that.
Thanks, folks, and a special thanks to Director Phelps-Finney. You'll understand why in a minute when I introduce her bio. We're going to turn to the next portion of our programming, but you'll notice that I've taken off my coat. So please feel comfortable getting comfortable. We're among friends here. It's my pleasure to introduce Benjamin Smith, Deputy Director of the Indian Health Service, as our next speaker. Director Smith is an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation, and as Deputy Director, he leads the Health and Human Services, Indian Health Service operations to ensure delivery of quality, comprehensive health services integrated across all levels of the agency. Deputy Director, thank you.
Good morning. It's an honor to stand here before you today at the White House Water Summit, and especially to see Native culture and innovation so beautifully represented here. And thank you very much for getting us started off in a good way to my tribal leadership that's here. Water is life. This is a common refrain we hear often throughout Indian country. This is not just a saying, it's a profound truth that connects our traditional responsibility to care for our natural resources with our belief that we must also take care of our people. And it underscores all of the discussions that we're going to have here today. At the Indian Health Service, we know that clean water and robust infrastructure are not merely conveniences, they are an essential matter of public health. Today, we gather not just to discuss, but to celebrate some major advancements in our efforts. In fact, at the Indian Health Service today, we are going to announce the allocation decisions for $700 million in funding from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. This law provides $3.5 billion to the Indian Health Service over 5 years. That started back in fiscal year 22 and is going to run through fiscal year 26 to develop critical infrastructure. This includes robust drinking water sources, reliable sewage systems, and effective solid waste disposal facilities. To date, we've been tracking our progress, and we've been able to fund and support over 765 projects across all Indian Health Service areas. When you combine this funding with our annual appropriations, the allocation decisions that we'll announce today, we'll be able to fully fund construction costs for an additional 91 projects. And this is substantial. In fact, it's transformative. More than 36,000 American Indian and Alaska Native households will gain access to essential services. Improved sanitation facilities are expected to significantly reduce healthcare visits related to the host of health problems present in communities without basic water infrastructure. In fact, we estimate that for each dollar that's invested into water, that we're avoiding $1.18 in avoidable healthcare costs. As Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary Brain just mentioned, we are also here together to announce our memorandum of understanding with the Bureau of Reclamation. This memorandum of understanding is in line with President Biden's Executive Order 14112, which directs federal agencies to work together to remove barriers and streamline tribal access to resources. Together, we aim to collaborate on the completion of tribal facilities that provide reliable domestic water supplies, reflecting a whole-of-government approach to tackling this critical issue. This partnership will leverage the Bureau of Reclamation's engineering capacity to accelerate completion of studies, planning, and design of these much-needed infrastructure projects. And there's more good news. A pilot project has already been identified, paving the way for this immediate impact and setting the stage for future initiatives. It's my honor to yield to Yakima Nation Tribal Council Gerald Lewis to share more about this exciting development. Together, we are not just planning for a better tomorrow, we are ensuring that the sovereignty and wisdom of tribal nations are at the heart of our journey forward. Thank you.
Well, and thank you for that introduction. I just brought up my talking points. I believe it's about 20, 30 pages long. But I pared it down to about 2 pages. So I just wanted to express my gratitude to each and every one of you that could be here on this day. I want to say a prayer for the one that had suffered this pass out here within this room. I know this weather has been very complicated. When I left home, it was overcast. Felt like it wanted to snow. And I got over here, and it was sun shining and warm. I thought I was in California. This was in D.C. But nevertheless, good morning. It is an honor to be with you today. My name is Gerald Lewis. My name is Kalula. And I represent 11,000 members of the Confederated Tribes and Bands of the Yakima Nation. In our traditional way, when we gather together in the Longhouse for our services, we sit together at the ceremonial table and we wait for the water to be poured. Next, the salmon is placed on the table, followed by the deer, roots, and berries. Our first foods. Finally, we complete the meal when we finish the same way we started, with water. It's at the very beginning and it's at the end. That is how much we cherish water. There are 574 foreign sovereign federal recognized tribes in the United States, as I had mentioned earlier. It seems like we're a disappearing race, but we are still here. We are still amongst each and every one. Our communities and cultures are all unique, but we are connected by our understanding that water is sacred, water is life. The Yakima Nation is glad to come together with other tribal, state, and local governments today to support the important goals of the Biden's administration. America the Beautiful Freshwater Challenge. Protecting our freshwater resources supports the health of our people, our first foods, and our way of life. Over the past 20 years, Yakima Nation's fisheries program has restored or protected nearly 2,000 miles of stream and riparian habitat and 14,000 acres of wetlands. We also restored fish access to over 200 miles of stream habitat by removing barriers and diversions, and secured over 17,000 acre-feet per year of water through in-stream conservation. We experience lots of the challenges regarding water in Indian country. Some tribes do not have reliable water delivery systems. Some experience unsafe or bad water quality. This has serious health implications for our people and also prevents economic growth in our communities. When the Yakama Nation signed our treaty with the United States in 1855, we ceded around 12 million acres of our traditional territory, about 1/3 of the state of Washington, in exchange for the United States' promise that we would have a safe and healthful homeland for our people. Unfortunately, the Yakama Nation Water and Sanitation Program has had to issue due not consuming notices and provide bottled water to people in some areas because of the unsafe levels of arsenic in our water supply. In Georgeville, a community of the ceded lands of Yakama Nation, which is located in our territory in south central Washington, our people couldn't drink the tap water for over a year. Fortunately, with funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law and in partnership with the federal government, we will be able to build a new water treatment facility for Georgeville. The Georgeville Arsenic Treatment Project is important to the Yakama Nation, but the approach being taken by the federal government in Georgeville will also be important to all of Indian country. This project is intended to be the first pilot project under the new MOU between the Indian Health Service and the Bureau of Reclamation. Having IHS and Reclamation working together and combining their technical knowledge will speed up project delivery. This is important because every day we spend waiting for the Georgeville project to be completed is a day where Yakama families go without safe drinking water system. A day where our people remain worried about the well-being of their children and elders. This new interagency approach is intended to help remove barriers and eliminate red tape, which President Biden called for in the recent executive order on reforming the delivery of federal funding and support for tribal nations. The federal government has a treaty obligation and trust responsibility to the tribes to make sure we have access to good, clean water. Our reservation lands cannot function as homelands if we do not have clean, safe water to drink. Unfortunately, over the last century, the federal investments in modern water and sanitation systems have largely bypassed Native American communities. Federal studies show that nearly 48% of U.S. homes on Native American land, in contrast to less than 1% of the U.S. homes overall, lack access to reliable, clean drinking water and basic sanitation services. Significant federal resources are urgently needed to address critical water and sanitation projects in Indian country that have been ignored by the federal government for far too long. I applaud the Biden administration for their work to address this fundamental injustice and to fulfill federal treaty and trust obligations to the tribes. Thank you. I believe we have next the Klamath Film Tribe.
Mr. Chairman, thank you both. You talked about combining knowledge, and for the last 3 years, you've both shared so much with our team, and I just very much appreciate that. What I heard is that water is about people, and we are people about water. And so I'm really excited to introduce our next person on water, an expert in addressing complex and enormous challenges like a global pandemic or the moral imperative of ensuring clean water for all. Natalie Quillian, Deputy Chief of Staff to President Biden.
Thank you, guys. You definitely brought the weather, thank you. We had a rough, cold Sunday and Monday, and here we are. And then you bring the weather, and then we make you sit inside, so sorry about that. But thank you for coming. Thank you, Chair Lewis, for those inspirational words. Thank you, Sarah, for that introduction. And thank you for all that all of you are doing on this really important mission, and thank you for coming here for the White House Water Summit. So as Sarah mentioned, in my role, I have the honor of working with partners in the government and outside the government to implement President Biden's Investing in America agenda, which including on this absolutely essential issue of delivering clean water across the country. President Biden understands, as I know everyone in this room does, that clean water is one of the most basic resources we have. It seems pretty straightforward to say it, but we haven't always recognized that. It underpins so much of what we do every day. It's our everyday lives, our ecosystems, our landscapes. Water is so essential and so critical that we often don't realize how important it is until it falters, until we see floods, until we see droughts, until the water coming out of our taps or our neighbors' taps is contaminated with lead. But we're, like all of you, focused on it every day. President Biden's Investing in America agenda is making transformational investments in water across a number of fronts. I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you because we got a lot of numbers. So we're investing over $15 billion through the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law to tackle drought in the West. We're investing, there you go, take that. We're investing $5 billion through FEMA to help communities build resilience to a range of climate disasters, including floods and storms. There you go. We're protecting freshwater ecosystems that are key to securing a healthy environment. For example, EPA, who I know you're going to hear from today, is making the largest investment in the Great Lakes in 2 decades. That's $1 billion to clean up legacy pollution in bodies of water across the Great Lakes region, from Wisconsin to Michigan to Ohio. And the exciting new America the Beautiful Freshwater Challenge that Brenda discussed will help accelerate all of our efforts to protect freshwater resources. Now, Brenda. Here. Now, one area I wanted to focus on a bit today is ensuring access to clean and safe water. As I said earlier, the president believes, like all of you do, that everyone should be able to turn on their faucet and drink clean water. And everyone should have access to wastewater and sanitation services that they need to keep their homes healthy, their kids healthy, their families healthy and clean. But millions of Americans, as we just heard, still don't have access to clean water. But we're changing that, and all of you are changing that. In total, the bipartisan infrastructure law that the president passed alone invests $50 billion to deliver clean water. It's the largest investment in clean water in American history. And through another big bill that the president passed, the American Rescue Plan, we're investing another $20 billion in water infrastructure. And with this funding, we've already launched over 1,400 drinking water and wastewater projects across the country. And these projects are fixing our aging drinking water infrastructure, they're upgrading water treatment plants, and they're removing harmful contaminants from our water. $15 billion of this funding is dedicated to replacing toxic lead pipes. We know how dangerous lead can be. It can cause irreversible harm to brain development in our kids. But even today, knowing that 9 million homes, schools, daycares, and businesses get their water through a lead pipe. That's unacceptable. And President Biden has committed to putting an end to this by replacing every lead pipe in this country within a decade. We've already announced $6 billion of this funding to every state and territory in America, and work replacing those lead pipes is underway in cities like St. Paul, Milwaukee, and Detroit. Places like Benton Harbor, Michigan, have finished replacing all of their lead pipes, and we're going to continue that progress. Another $9 billion in the president's infrastructure law is dedicated to removing PFAS, for these forever chemicals that we all know about, from drinking water. And exposure to these chemicals is linked to deadly cancers and has already upended too many American lives. And this funding will help us tackle that contamination. And just this month, of course, you all know, EPA issued the first ever national drinking water standard for PFAS chemicals, which will protect 100 million Americans from exposure. You have to give that love to the EPA when they come too. It wouldn't be possible without them. So lastly, I wanted to turn to a critical element of all of this work, which is delivering clean water to our tribes. For generations, as we heard, far too many tribal communities have dealt with polluted sources of drinking water or a complete lack of infrastructure to deliver basic sanitation. We've invested billions of dollars and funded over 700 projects to date through the President's Investing in America agenda to fix this inequity and secure clean water for tribal nations. And it was great to hear from Michael Brain from the Department of Interior, from Ben Smith from Indian Health Service, and obviously it's from Chair Lewis of the Yakama Nation on how they're advancing tribal clean water together. You all are leading the charge. These applause should be at you on these critical work, and partnerships like those announced today and like we're going to continue to announce really showcase how the president is trying to use every tool within his power to meet our priorities around clean water. So thank you for having me. Most importantly, thank you for coming, and thank you for all you are doing. And enjoy the rest of the day, and then you will be released into the sunshine. Thank you very much.
All right, that's a tough act to follow, but luckily I don't have to. I just get to introduce that a compelling video that will tell the story better than words alone can is about to show. Roll the tape.
Klamath River is what brings us life. We're at Ishipishi Falls, down here dip netting, traditional Karuk way of fishing, at our sacred ceremonial fishing spot. And very fortunate there's salmon here this year. This year, I'm actually living, where some years you don't feel like it so much when the fish ain't here and you're a fish people. Salmon signifies our ceremonies. It signifies what time of year it is. Karuk people believe that if the salmon are no longer in the river, humans are no longer on the land. And they put the dams in, it blocked off hundreds of miles of the pristine habitat that our salmon needed.
This is the largest river restoration and dam removal project that's ever been undertaken.
The opportunity to help restore the landscape and the habitat for what once was the third largest salmon fishery on the West Coast.
To have these dams removed is going to restore the culture of our people.
Dam removal is just the first step to restoration. The dams come out, the rivers are flowing back in their main channel again, and before dam removal is even complete, we're already getting vegetation established on the reservoir sediments.
We are going to revegetate the area using native seeds that are collected. They're not commercially available. And with that comes propagating over 11 billion seeds. started partnering with the Yurok tribe to do the seed collection.
Our grandchildren will be able to see what we've planted here.
The Yurok tribe, they've got a very large and robust fisheries construction division that's going to be a great resource when it's time to start building the physical restoration of the project. The Karuk tribe has an amazing fisheries department, and they're helping us identify opportunities for protection of fisheries resources during dam removal. The Klamath tribes in the Upper Basin have a world-class water quality laboratory, and we've entered into a partnership with them to monitor the evolution of poor water quality to improve water quality over the course of the project.
We're looking at about 2,200 acres of restoration between the 4 reservoirs.
You can imagine the complexities that come along with an undertaking like this.
We're going to be able to come out here and see salmon in a place where they haven't been in over 100 years.
We're not just restoring this earth or this ground, we're restoring our people as well.
Thank you, Rez. Also, cue the waterworks. Today, I get a really special job, and so hopefully my panelists can start sneaking up. I get to introduce to you 4 leaders in water policy and prompt them to share their wisdom. You just saw our first panelist on the screen, and now you see him in person. We've got Frankie Myers, Vice Chair of the Yurok tribe. He's a traditional religious practitioner, fisherman, and hunter, and he's got experience in natural resources management, community development, and cultural preservation. And next we have Katie Dykes, Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, or when I use the acronym, I like to call her Commissioner of the Deep. We're proud to claim her as a CEQ alumnus. Reed Wilson is the Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. He previously served as the Executive Director of the Conservation Trust for North Carolina, ahead of his time in advancing the goals of the partnership we launched today. And for nearly 8 years at US EPA as a political appointee in the Clinton administration. Natalie Phelps Finney serves as the Director of the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. Prior to this role, she served as state representative for Illinois' 118th legislative district, the first woman to hold that position. And you saw some of her skills on display because she's also the first nurse to serve in the history of the General Assembly. And while I'm not going to ask her to sing today, I understand that she and her sisters sing in a gospel trio. And I'm guessing she knows some powerful songs related to water. With that, let's get to know each other, shall we? From the Great Lakes to America's Everglades, to the boreal wetlands of the Pacific Northwest, to the mighty Mississippi, fresh water connects us all. The Biden-Harris administration's America the Beautiful initiative is about working together to meet and exceed a common goal to restore and protect the places that support us, by providing clean water, clean air, and healthy places to work, rest, play, and pray. Core memories from my childhood include watching alligators on the banks of the Santa Fe River from the safety of my parents' canoe. Of my kids, core memories include hunting for fossilized shark teeth in the stream beds of southern Maryland and catching crayfish in West Virginia. Water connects us across space and time. So, to open in a good way, panelists, what core memory do you want to share about water and a place worth treasuring?
I think I was 12 or 13 years old. And I remember the day very, very clearly. I had just got done studying net and checking it with my best friend, and we were laying on the river bar on the hot rocks, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is it right here. This is, if I could find a way to do this for the rest of my life. That's what I'm going to do. But I feel like since that point, that's what I've been trying to do, is find a place to be able to enjoy our river, enjoy our salmon, enjoy our culture, and truly just be at peace like I was when I was a young boy. In order to do that, though, there's a lot of work that we got to do to get back to that point. So I remember that day, and I feel like that is the day I am still striving to get back to.
Well, I have many core water memories because I was raised in West Virginia by a mom who is an environmental science teacher in high school. So we did a lot of sampling in rivers. I became a history major in college, though, because my mom, probably my work study job that I signed up for was boiling down samples of rainwater in Teflon beakers, which, yes, takes like 12 hours. But I was helping an ecology professor analyze these rainwater samples that have been collected over decades at an experimental forest in New Hampshire. And we were tracking heavy metal concentrations. And the cool thing, because I was a history major, is that I actually boiled a sample of rain that fell on the day I was born, which was pretty amazing. The other cool thing is that through this study, we saw the concentrations of lead dropping off really rapidly after lead was phased out of gasoline. And so for me, that was just such a, as we talk about the importance of optimism in environmental protection, it was just this critical demonstration of how when we commit to strong regulations that do the right thing to protect water and protect people, they actually have a really positive impact. Who misses lead in gasoline?
Not me. Good morning. So when I was a kid, we always went to the beach for our vacation every summer. I don't think we ever went to a river or a lake, and I know this is about fresh water. So my memories as a kid about fresh water are probably different than most people's. I grew up outside of Washington, and my father worked for the federal government. And in the late 60s, early 70s, he was a staff member of the U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. So he helped create the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and when Senator Ed Muskie introduced the Clean Water Act on the Senate floor, the speech he read was written by my father, Richard Wilson. And so my freshwater memories are about the Cuyahoga River burning, field hearings, congressional roadblocks, and let's not forget Richard Nixon's veto. But I did gain, so that was all up here as a kid, but I gained that sort of gut connection to fresh water when I was in college. I took an aquatic biology course in the Boundary Waters canoe area, canoed around for 5 weeks, and it changed my aspect when you can look to the bottom of a clear lake that's deep and see the fish going like this at the bottom, and you can dip your water in the lake and drink it, and everything is okay. So I'll always treasure that.
Yeah, that's a different experience indeed. My experience, people hear Illinois and they think Chicago, so I'm quick to tell you, by my accent you can tell I don't live in Chicago. I live in southern Illinois, which is pretty much Kentucky. And so we were, yeah, I mean, it really is. So I live very near the Ohio River, but growing up, I just live a county to the south and east of where I was raised, and it was a poor community. My family was certainly not well off, and so my first experience in, tangibly with water and outdoors in the environment is Drudge Ditch that ran along my grandmother's house, which we're not sure what Drudge Ditch was. I probably is maybe directly responsible for my healthy immune system, because we were we were down in there digging for, we call them crawdads in my neck of the woods. So we were always bringing crawdads back to my mama, and so that's one of my earliest memories. But I will say I'm thankful to have a mother who was a pioneer in our home for conservation, because when we would brush our teeth, take a shower, she'd say, turn the water off in between. You don't have to have the water running that long. It conserves our water. And I thought, as a child, what's wrong with her? But as you grow and you learn, you become educated. I think my mom was pretty smart. She was ahead of her time for our area, certainly. So those are some of my earliest memories. And then also, Illinois is just such a rich water state, as we'll talk more about here in a minute. But from the Great Lake, Lake Michigan, all the way down to the confluence of the mighty Mississippi and the Ohio River. I remember my dad taking me there for the first time and standing in awe and thinking, wow, and seeing that. And then we were a fishing family. My grandma would always outfish us with a cane pole. We'd have our fancy rod and reels, and she'd get her cane pole out and could always catch more fish than the rest of us cousins. So wonderful memories that are deeply embedded in my childhood and who I am. So thank you.
Panelists. I'm just reminded when you talk about the optimism, Commissioner, of the end of the movie Frozen 2, where Queen Elsa of Arendelle says, "Thank goodness water has memory." And so the work we do will demonstrate results if we let it. And with that, Vice Chair Myers, we got to see you on screen, on the big screen in your cameo. I hope it's not the last one. Can you tell us more about what we saw there? How the Yurok tribe worked with neighboring sovereigns? What were the biggest obstacles? And how did you work to overcome them? And at the end of the day, what is your hope or your vision for the future of Klamath River restoration?
Thank you for allowing me to come up here and chat with you all and to sit and watch this film. I think what we all were witnessing in that short clip is thousands of generations of knowledge being handed down and implemented using modern technology. I tell people we have been doing river restoration for our entire lives that go back to time immemorial. It's what we've always done. It's why we are here on Earth. It's our purpose. We're always working towards restoring balance. It's what we did before. It's what we're doing now. And we get to use cool tools, big equipment to do it, modern technology to implement what is a very, very old set of skills. And it's amazing because now, I think more than ever, that's what we need. It's what we need. We need to go back to understanding our purpose as human beings here on Earth because we have a purpose. We're supposed to be here. We're a part of the environment. It's our job and our responsibility to take care of the world around us and restore it. It is something that all of our tribal people along the Klamath River and the Klamath Basin understand and work towards. There was a time not so long ago that federal policy and state policy had driven wedges between us as a people. And it was in 2002 when we witnessed the worst fish kill in our history that brought us together and reminded us why we're here. And it's not to fight over federal funding. It's not to fight over ancestral territories. It's supposed to be to work together to restore balance for our salmon. As Vice Chairman being said on the video, salmon that we know and understand is a critical keystone species to our survival here on Earth. And we've faced many challenges, regulatory challenges, working to remove dams, working to remove power generating facilities. I don't think it's necessarily what they thought of when they created FERC. But, we got it done. And I felt like a salmon myself. It felt like running through the regulatory process was going against the stream. And we kept hitting dams all along the way. But we figured it out. And I think having folks who understood our reason and who understood what we were trying to do make the changes necessary. And I see one of the things I talk about how we overcome these challenges is understanding that regardless of what agency or organization or regulatory body you're working with, it's just people. We're just people, right? And if you can connect with people, if you can connect with another human being, regardless of whether the FERC commissioner or the water operator or whatever it is, you connect as a person. And I think with that thought process, we were able to overcome all of our obstacles. And by the end of this year, we will have a free-flowing, dam-free Klamath Basin, Klamath River.
He's good, right? He's good. Commissioner of the Deep.
I would like that title.
We'd all like that title, right? Connecticut has it all in a compact footprint. Rivers that support Atlantic salmon, a new National Estuarine Research Reserve, state greenways, an open space and watershed land acquisition program, funding assistance for urban green space, a focus on agricultural lands and heritage, and a commitment to public access and recreation. And it's the home state of Chair Brenda Mallory.
Waterbury.
Can you share with us a freshwater initiative that may be small in footprint, but has meaningful and important benefit for the people and environment of Connecticut and the nation?
That's actually a very lengthy but good potential tagline for Connecticut, because we are a small state that we think has a lot to share in terms of environmental protection, leadership, and models. Just to orient you to our state, we are small, but we have 3.6 million people. We're the fourth densest state in terms of human population in the country. And when we have that many people thriving and living in a small, compact area, we know what that means for impacts to our ecosystems, the criticality of protecting our water resources, and also the importance of community and connection. I love your comments, Vice Chair, because that's been my experience on working on these issues in our state. We are also a state that has a very long legacy of industrialization, which means that we have some of the highest number of dams per river mile of any state in the country. At 54 dams per 100 miles, the national average is 6. And with that industrial legacy comes a lot of brownfields and toxic chemical deposition that is impacting our waterways. You may not know this, but Connecticut actually has rural areas too. And in fact, a quarter of our residents get their drinking water from groundwater sources, which is why it's so important to address those industrial sites where we have continued chemical leakage into our waterways. So we are all very connected in Connecticut. One of the things that, again, back to this theme of optimism, obviously all of us, all of our objectives, our missions, our states, the people that we serve are being challenged by the acceleration of climate change. But the example I want to share is one way that we're finding at least some positivity in how we're responding to climate change to help advance some of the other ecosystem and environmental protection values that we've been fighting for a very long time. So for example, in Connecticut, we've seen extreme precipitation events that are becoming much more frequent, which are being, really stressing our infrastructure. Last year was our third wettest year on record. Several of our cities experienced 200% of normal rainfall falling between July and September. And so that means a lot of water that needs to be managed in a small area. And we've been responding with establishing for the first time in our state a climate resilience fund, which is providing planning grants and seed funding and hopefully match funding that we can pair with federal dollars to help more communities build climate resilient infrastructure. And nature-based solutions are at the front at the core of what we're prioritizing. And so I'll just say, if you visit Connecticut, you'll see communities like the community of Hampden that have been investing in things like stormwater bioretention ponds, where they're creating basins that can treat runoff in multi-acre drainage areas. And we're funding those in part, braiding together funding from the Clean Water Act as well as our new Climate Resilience Fund to help create these bioswales and other water retention areas that are now providing, here's the silver lining, restoring native plants and wildlife biodiversity and ecosystem habitats. And so it's really exciting, not to mention recreation opportunities for the communities that have little access to green space. We're really excited about what that means, and especially as we see right now our Connect legislature debating laws that will help us accelerate the removal of dams. Certainly, we've known for a long time about the number of dams in Connecticut. Many of them are privately owned, but it's with the acceleration of climate change that it's now bringing to the fore the importance of utilizing tools like dam removal to help keep communities safe. And so this is one way that we're, again, trying to use our response to climate change as a way to better connect our communities, to better protect our communities and our ecosystems, which are connected by the water that we're talking about today.
Connecticut. I never really thought of it that way.
She's good.
Secretary Wilson, it's been quite a season for wetlands in North Carolina, and I'm not just talking about spring. The regulatory landscape maybe feels unsteady. Court decisions, state legislation, but under the leadership of the Cooper administration, what hasn't changed is a dedication to the unique and essential waters that make North Carolina a hub of outdoor recreation, rich in biodiversity. Can you talk a bit about the threats to unique North Carolina waters, but also the opportunities that led to the governor's executive order?
Sure, thanks. Not long after the Supreme Court decision that weakened wetlands protections, our state legislature passed a Farm Act that on the state level weakens wetlands protections. Governor Cooper vetoed it. The legislature overrode that veto. But our governor, Roy Cooper, is just an incredible leader on environmental issues, public health, climate, conservation, and to sort of meet the challenge of having fewer regulatory tools, 2 months ago he issued an executive order on natural and working lands. It calls for some really ambitious goals that we're already working on. One is to conserve 1 million acres of natural and working lands, focusing on wetlands and forests, to also to restore 1 million acres of stream banks, wetlands, forests, to do reforestation as well, and to plant 1 million trees in urban areas. And we are obviously that helps to address climate in those areas that get so hot in cities. And we're to do all this by 2040. And we're hard at work on it. Also in his executive orders is a requirement that all of the agencies that report to him only plant native plants going forward. And another key part of this executive order is that my colleagues at the Department of Environmental Quality will update mapping of wetlands so we have a better idea of which areas are most threatened by development, because we are a rapidly growing state. Everybody's moving to North Carolina, and we welcome you, but we don't want to destroy all of our wetlands. So by mapping them better, we'll be able to target our resources at protecting those that are most threatened. The executive order also calls for issuance of a report on the potential costs of loss of all these wetlands, or significant portion, and a report on the benefits of preserving them and benefits of the land conservation and the restoration, all of those things that are the action steps in that executive order. So, you know, it's bold, ambitious, and we're excited about it. And we have tools at our disposal to implement. We have a state land and water fund, which has about $30 million a year, $35 million a year, for state agencies, local governments, and conservation nonprofits to protect land along streams and restore wetlands. We have a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund, which helps our state park system buy more land, and we give grants to local governments for their parks, trails, and greenways through that grant. And though we were both the first state to create a conservation tax credit, an incentive for landowners to conserve their land, we were also the first state to eliminate it. But we have, that was 11 years ago, but there's increasing momentum at the legislature to bring that back. So that would be another key tool in reaching these ambitious goals that the governor set out.
So as you can hear, Secretary Wilson stays both hydrated and caffeinated, and I promise we're going to get you both of those things in a little bit. Secretary Phelps-Finney, as you mentioned, Illinois just has fresh water in abundance, and in your other all-the-time job as a parent, it's instructive because our children and our health are so integrally reliant on clean water. Through the Investing in America agenda, the Biden administration is making investments in removing legacy pollution from the Great Lakes. But can you talk about Governor Pritzker's vision for conservation and restoration of Illinois and the Great Lake coast?
Yeah, thank you so much. There's so much I could say, just that first part about, as a mother and also a nurse practitioner, and so much has been said already about what water means to us, and it seems kind of, sometimes I think we do these things that seem silly, like, why are we having to talk about this? Don't we know this? But we take things for granted. This is human nature, right, to just take it for granted and rest on our laurels. Everything's fine. We've got water. Everything's good, and it's not. So, and I saw that in my healthcare work, and somebody coming in with so many illnesses, and you're thinking, this is our water, this is our food, this is, so I'm so honored to be a part of this, and just to springboard off that, it's amazing to work for a governor who is a conservation champion. Governor Pritzker's administration has been very clear, unashamed about the stances they're taking, and specific to shoreline resiliency, and I could talk about the Lake Michigan. We have two major projects going, and so when you have the Biden-Harris administration with this amazing amount of money coming to our state, and then you have a governor who's willing to step up and do that. We are living in a golden time, right? The sun's shining on us. In where I come from, you say you make hay while the sun shines, and so we're trying to make as much hay as possible. And so two major projects that are moving. We have one called the Rebel Ridge Project. It's a first of its kind. It's a pilot study, and this is all along Lake Michigan. We have the Illinois Beach State Park, which has had major erosion. If you look at the maps over the last 30, 40 years, you kind of gasp when you see how much shoreline has been lost. And so we also have our first ever nature preserve that was dedicated there at the Illinois State Beach 60 years ago. So it's a very high quality, sensitive, precious area. And so this Rebel Ridge project is, like I said, a first of its kind pilot. Instead of the normal breakwaters that you see, there are a series of submerged ridges, just like it sounds, rock ridges that are in, I think there's 3 of them. And the goal is to, it attenuates the wave effect and diminishes the intensity and the energy of the wave. So it's really interesting. And then also the Rebel Ridges themselves provide ecosystem habitat as well. So there's all kinds of diving going on, cameras and studying going on of those ridges, how the ecosystem's developing. It's a really fascinating project. I believe that's about $10 million project. And then just to the north of that, along still Illinois Beach State Park, is, I would call it the Illinois Beach Breakwater project. And that is more of a traditional breakwater in the sense that they're above the water, but yet it's different as well, because instead of these normal kind of, you would have these the way that they lay them out, I don't know what that's called, but this is very unique. It's set up as like islands, and there were some old islands that have deteriorated, so they're kind of rebuilding those and then putting a few other breakwaters. They've done so many hydraulic studies. It's really fascinating when I've said it on these meetings to get these, but it's a very unique series of breakwaters that we're not aware of been done anywhere else. Again, to get that accretion back in the area and restore habitat. So that's a $73 million project that was made possible through federal funding and some of our state funds, and it's the largest Department of Natural Resource capital project in the history of DNR. So we're excited about that and what these projects are going to do for our ecosystem and shoreline restoration. So I could go on and on about a lot of the projects, but specifically to that's a major project we're proud of.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing with us. as water people, we're fluid and flexible. And so we're going to change actually our run of show a little bit this afternoon and give y'all a moment to take a break. Please, for my benefit, as you introduce yourselves to people you haven't met before, share a core memory about water, find a way to connect. And I just want to give a particular shout out to our CEQ interns. They are employable when they're done. And if you haven't, introduce yourself to my team, who has been just tremendous, Nicole Cordan and Brendan Phillip. All right, let's head out and take a break.
Do we get to keep these, yeah?
Good afternoon, everyone. The technical term for what I'm doing is called muster. And that was a really good muster, you guys. I ride horses in my spare time, which means I haven't ridden a horse in 7 years. But there's a saying that the outside of a horse is good for the inside of a person, and the same is true of rivers, streams, and wetlands. Our next speakers are going to excite and inspire you after the awesome refreshments provided by the Water Foundation. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Andrew. We need not worry about the world we leave our children, because they are already engaged and organized and demanding better of us. Teachers, if you're watching, consider this very educational day an independent study. Without delay, please meet Kia Wicki and Ruby Rain Williams from Rios to Rivers.
Hi, Wicki. My name is Ruby Williams. I'm 16 years old, and I'm from the northwest corner of California in this little small town called Happy Camp. I'm a Kaduk person and a Quartz Valley member of the tribe.
Kia ora tātou. Hello, everybody. My name is Kia Wicki. I'm 15 years old. I'm also from the northwest corner of California. I'm a descendant of the Yurok, Talawa, and Kaduk peoples, as well as the Ngāti Porou and Seapoti peoples from Aotearoa, or New Zealand. First and foremost, we just want to say thank you so much for allowing us to speak here. We are really grateful for the opportunity to present in front of all of you today. And most importantly, we want to thank the past generations who are the real reason that we are here today, who have fought the hardest. And we are just so incredibly grateful to be here. Some quick background, me and Ruby are both a part of Paddle Troubled Waters. Paddle Troubled Waters is a program under the organization Rios to Rivers. It's a 2-week program that teaches Native youth from the Klamath River how to whitewater kayak and teaches them leadership and river advocacy skills. It's a really cool program, and it's pioneering representation for Native kids, and it's getting us all ready to be the first people to descend down the undammed Klamath River. It's really cool. Okay, all right.
Sorry, guys. I've lived on the Klamath River my entire life. I've never, ever been allowed to swim in it. It's always been too dirty and way too sick. The dams from the Klamath Project were constructed between 1912 and 1962 and cut off our life source from that point on, deteriorating the water and land we depended on since time immemorial. The reservoirs, agriculture runoffs, and draining of wetlands in the Klamath River Basin have cultivated toxic algae blooms and make our water too sick to drink or swim. The dams have blocked our salmon from returning home, and the warmer waters from reservoirs and climate change have killed our salmon. My elders have always told me stories that oh my gosh. My elders have always told me stories about how they would go to the river and there would always an abundance of salmon. You could see them so clear in the water, and you would be able to grab them with just your bare hands. Since then, they have seen them leave less and less with the dams being up every single year, to the point where when we're doing our cultural dip net fishing, it's lucky if we get salmon at all. Salmon is one of our first foods, so it's sad to see that we can't have ceremonies for our family gatherings or ceremonies. It used to make up 15% of our proteins as Karuk people. It is now hardly making up any at all. It's just really sad and terrible. The lack of salmon now, we are more vulnerable to heart disease, diabetes, and young life expectancy.
For over 100 years, our ancestors have been fighting for the reconnection and restoration of our river and our peoples. Now that the Klamath River dams are coming down, our river will be able to flow on its terms again and cleanse itself of the toxic algae. With our river being able to be itself again, us as Indigenous people will be ourselves again. We will never ever have to say to our mokopuna, our grandchildren, you can't swim, you can't fish, you can't do what you were born to do. As we and our parents and our grandparents and their grandparents were all told. This is why committing to agreements and policies to protect and reclaim clean, free-flowing rivers and water is pivotal. With the largest river restoration project in history happening now, the Klamath can again be dependable for future generations, and it is now a time of opportunity and inspiration for the Klamath and other waters, but we know that the fight is not over. Supporting fun ways for youth to connect and reclaim our rivers is imperative, and this is why programs like Paddle Troubled Waters are so crucial.
At Paddle Troubled Waters, we have fun while learning how to advocate for healthy, clean rivers so that we in our communities are recentered our source of life and vitality that we have enjoyed since the beginning of time.
Despite the fact that we are both still in high school, we are already working hard to create the conditions so our grandchildren will live with access to a healthy river and an abundant fishery like our great-grandparents, and all of our grandparents before them experienced. Thank you everyone here who's trying to heal our planet. We really appreciate it. Waklau. Thank you.
We couldn't have done it without you. Oh, God, no.
Good job. Let me give them a high five for that.
See, if we'd done that before the panel, you'd all be hugging them. Kia, Ruby, I cannot wait to see what the planet looks like under your leadership. I hear that you're going to make the earth cool again. Tell your friends and anyone watching to apply for the newly launched American Climate Corps or a White House internship. As a mom, from the depths of my heart, thank you. I'm proud of you. Keep going. Our next speaker needs no introduction. She's known to many of us gathered today for her genuine, professional, and effective way of doing the work to ensure a healthier environment for us all. But here I go anyway. Please welcome the Deputy Administrator for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Janet McCabe, on her second tour at EPA, having spent 7 years in the Office of Air and Radiation during the Obama-Biden administration. And I hope she'll share with us a core memory that she has related to water.
Thank you. That was so nice. I've been sitting here thinking about my core water memory. Being an air person, it's hard to be as affectionate about an air shed. Although I know if you want to improve public health, make the air cleaner, right? But there is something about water, right? So the memory that I'll share is about a glacial kettle pond on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, where I've been every single year of my life. And the way I connect it with the work that I do now is that I remember as a child, I used to, there are all the little freshwater toads, right? And I would collect them and name them after the dwarves in the Frodo thing. And then there were some years where there just were hardly any toads at all. And I started learning about acid rain. And guess what? I have little grandchildren now, and the toads are back. So that's a great story in many ways. And I tell it a lot to people because it's an example of an environmental challenge, a huge, what seemed to be unsolvable environment, right? It was going to bring the economy down. It was going to make electricity too expensive for anybody. We couldn't do it, and we did, right? And the hole in the ozone layer is healing, another one. How do you possibly do that? Global challenge. We can do these things. It takes commitment, and it takes many years sometimes, but we can do it. So I'm so glad to be here today because at EPA, we are working every single day on issues related to the bodies of water that we all care about, that you all care about, that provide us with drinking water, that provide us with the habitat for the species ones that we depend on, like salmon, and ones that we depend on in very nuanced, hard to describe ways. Right? Because biodiversity is important to all of us ultimately in its own right and because of what it means for the health of the planet that we all share. So we're doing this every day, and you know how when you're in the middle of doing something, you can't really see it. And to have walked in at a time when a speaker was ticking through all the things that this administration has done, all at once, saying them all together, and hearing you guys applaud is so meaningful to us. It allows us to step back a minute and see this is what you can do when you have a president who, day one, says, I'm not leaving here before we fix some of these things. But it's not just us, it's really all of you and the millions of people that you all represent and that you're related to and that you work with around the country who care as much about these issues as we do, for whatever gets them there, right? Whatever gets them there. So I'm going to mention some of the things that have already been mentioned today, and I'll just say right now, I don't think you can say them too many times. Because years go by without things like this to talk about. And my colleagues at EPA, many of them have been working as civil servants for years, decades, on particular issues that are now being delivered under this administration. And so you really can't say it too many times. I'm going to start with climate change, the environmental issue more than of our time. And certainly of the time of our younger colleagues, but even those of us who have grown up in a world where people weren't paying enough attention to climate change are realizing, oh yeah, my world is different now than it was. And how climate change intersects with water is something that I don't need to tell all of you about. And it affects poor communities, it affects communities of color, it affects communities that are less resilient more than others, and that is not fair. And the impacts are being felt more and more and more through extreme flooding, through droughts, through the unpredictability that is affecting all of us these days. I come from the middle of the country. There's a lot of attention to the Great Lakes. I'm hearing I come from Indiana. I have to tell you, there's a little Indiana contingent at EPA working very hard to represent the Midwest and every place else. But there, Indiana, pretty safe, right? Except not so much. I think we have floods and droughts. And wildfire smoke. So even in Indiana, safe place in the middle of the country, lots of green things and growing things, we're feeling it there. EPA has, last year we launched our climate adaptation plan. This is a very comprehensive plan across the agency. Every office in the agency brought forward its contributions, and it focuses significantly on the water sector to help mitigate the effects of climate change. We have the boost, it's more than boost is an understatement, of the bipartisan infrastructure law. We are embedding climate mitigation, climate resilience into regulations and other programs, into the grant programs that we run, making sure that we're helping to build community capacity to understand what it means to be resilient in the water sector when it comes to climate change. Let's do green infrastructure, not gray anymore with federal dollars. Let's protect those wetlands, coastlines, intercoastal waterways, protect the oceans, pay attention to the coastal flooding, storm surges, and the things that threaten ecosystems, fresh water, clean water, and human life and property. I'm very, very proud at how EPA is embedding climate change considerations, especially resilience, into everything that we do. You've heard already about the incredible investments that we're able to make through the infrastructure law into water infrastructure, billions of dollars going across the country. And again, that's a place where we can make sure, as we hand those monies over to the state, make sure that your policies, states, are prioritizing vulnerable areas that have not had access to federal dollars for these kinds of programs before, and make sure that you are prioritizing spending that money on things that will not make for problems in the future when we know better than that and we can avoid them now. Our partners with state governments, municipalities, tribal governments, territories, just amazing, the impact that we can make. Safe water to drink. There's nothing more fundamental than knowing that if you turn on the tap in your house and you pour a glass of water, you can give it to your child and not have to worry. From the minute we get up and brush our teeth in the morning to the minute we go to bed and brush our teeth at night, turning the water off to conserve water, not to mention all the coffee and tea we make and all those sorts of things. There is nothing more fundamental than that, and no bigger responsibility for us in government to make sure that resources are directed responsibly towards making sure that people have safe and clean water to drink. And we rely on a lot of those of you in the room and your colleagues to help make sure that that story is told across the country, so that people know there are actually many, many people living in this country who do not have access to safe, clean drinking water, may not have access to municipal water at all, may not have a sewage system that they're tied into, and a lot of people that would not compute for them. They couldn't imagine that in the United States of America, but we know that it's the reality. I'm particularly proud of the work that this administration and EPA has done with respect to PFAS. And you know that one of the first things out of the gate for this administration was to issue EPA's PFAS roadmap, which had many, many very specific activities in it, actions in it that we would take. And we are crossing those off the list every day. It is very, very good thing. We have a companion plan at EPA, which is our lead roadmap. This is an issue of personal interest to me, having worked at a children's environmental health organization that was founded by, Tom Neltner, sitting in the middle of the room here, and focused a lot on lead poisoning in Indiana, which of course is not just from water, it's from paint and dust as well. So our lead plan focuses on all of those things, but the difference that we're making on lead pipes in this country under this president is life-changing, absolutely life-changing. I don't want to take up too much more time because I know we're running behind, and I want you to be able to hear the panel, including my colleague Bruno Piggott. But I want to make one last point that I think is really important. It is not just a water thing, but it is a President Biden thing, and that is the importance of science. None of us... Do you guys remember the March on Science? in 2016, and all the great posters, and everybody had their favorite one. My favorite one was a poster that said, "Got polio? Me neither. Thank you, science." Science is at the basis of everything we do at EPA, and you can't deliver, you can write the best policies in the world, but if they're not based on sound science and facts, they are not going to make a difference, and we will all have wasted a lot of time and energy. And so I'm so proud that this administration, when they came in, they said, no fooling around. We are serious about science. We're serious about following the rules and the practices about what makes sound science. We're about making sure that scientists can talk about what they do and they can disagree the way they do, and also recognizing that science is always evolving, and we have to make decisions based on the best information we have right now. That is our responsibility as policymakers. We're only here for the time we're here, and we know things are going to change in the future, and we're going to know better and more, and then we'll do it again. We'll do it better. We'll fix it, whatever it is. But we can't let science hold us back, but we need it to move us forward. So thank you all so much for everything that you do. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the White House for pulling us all together so that we could celebrate these amazing accomplishments. And there's still time left, and we still have things on our list to do. So we'll do another one of these pretty soon and have some more things to celebrate. Thank you so much.
Yes, Janet, let's do it again soon. Oh, so connections. Secretary Wilson talked about his dad serving on the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee as a staffer and writing important speeches. And our next moderator has a similar background, and she's written some important speeches too. But I'm excited to hear her voice. It's my honor and privilege to introduce our Deputy National Climate Advisor, Mary Frances Repko.
Thanks all for bearing with me with the long walk across the room. First of all, thank you, Janet, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really grateful that you're all here today. I know how much effort it takes to leave your homes, to come here, to be here for an important and critical week, and to be here on such an important topic. Since day one, this administration has taken bold actions to protect all Americans from pollution in our drinking water. President Biden is a strong believer, as the Deputy Administrator indicated, that we should all feel safe when we turn on our taps. Not concerned, not unsure. We all deserve the grace of having that fidelity to what we're receiving in our homes as something that we can consume. That's why he set a goal of removing 100% of lead pipes delivering water to our homes. That's also why he promised to rid our water systems of so-called forever chemicals. And this administration just announced a few weeks ago, the first ever, as the Deputy Administrator mentioned, national regulation to limit PFAS in our drinking water. And I'm so grateful to be on the next panel, particularly with Bruno Piggott and having heard from Deputy Administrator McCabe. I just want to thank EPA for their great work in doing all of that. The administration has really delivered unparalleled resources to address water contamination issues, with a dedicated $9 billion in the bipartisan infrastructure law for drinking water contaminants impacted by PFAS, $15 billion in the drinking water SRF for lead service line replacement, and an additional $12 billion in the bipartisan infrastructure law for drinking water improvements, including PFAS and lead. And as Sarah mentioned, I have the honor of being here and seeing that full circle. As the staff director of the Senate Environment Public Works Committee, our team worked to write those provisions, and now I'm here at the White House implementing those provisions. But as we celebrate those investments, we also know we have more to do to make sure that communities have the benefit of the new investments and the new regulations we've made. Today, we're announcing both the resources and the mechanisms to begin a whole-of-government approach to ensure that tribal nations have access to clean water. And in doing that work, we know we can't do it alone. So I also want to thank people like Tony Spaniola, who will be on the panel with me today, and all of you in this room who have pushed for years for these changes. Your stories, your passion, your dedication are helping this administration deliver on the most ambitious water agenda of any planet and any administration. We also know that there is more to do in continuing advocacy. We need all of you working together in partnership to ensure that the planet is safer, cleaner, and a more just place for all of us. And I can tell you that this administration will stand with you to achieve that goal. With that, I'd like to call up our next panelist, please. Mayor Cavalier Johnson from Milwaukee. He's been a stalwart leader in replacing lead service lines both in his own city and across the nation, and he is going to join us to talk about a new initiative that he and other mayors in his region are deploying to help accelerate lead service line replacement. Mayor Torrance Harvey from Newburgh, New York, is working to ensure that his constituents are safe from PFAS and lead contamination. He knows firsthand the importance of protecting our freshwater resources to ensure clean drinking water for all. Bruno Piggott, who I mentioned, Acting Assistant Administrator for EPA's Office of Water, has been the guiding hand on our PFAS and lead regulations, and he'll talk about EPA's efforts in this regard today. And finally, as I mentioned, my friend Tony Spaniola, co-chair of the Great Lakes PFAS Action Network, will share stories of PFAS contamination and his impressive work that his group has been doing to rid our drinking water of these forever chemicals. Mayor Johnson, I'm going to take my seat, but I'll turn it over to you now to just begin.
Great, thank you so much, Mayor Francis. And I appreciate having the opportunity to join each and every single one of you here today at this wonderful summit around water. I want to, before I proceed, shout out my fellow mayor from Wisconsin, Ryan Sorensen, from the great city of Sheboygan. Thank you for being here, Mayor. As well as my partners in the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaways Initiative, including Mayor Marcus Muhammad from Benton Harbor, Michigan. Thank you for being here, Mayor, as well. So I'm here today, not just in my capacity as mayor of the city of Milwaukee and all the work that we've done on lead service line replacement in our city over the course of the last 7 or so years. Also as a member of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaways Initiative and as co-chair of the Mayor's Commission on Water Equity to make an announcement as well. So I'm proud to announce that I'm partnering with my fellow big city mayors on the Great Lakes. Mayor Brandon Johnson, the other Mayor Johnson, of Chicago, and Mayor Mike Duggan of Detroit, Michigan. We are working together along with the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaways Initiative on a first-of-its-kind initiative to accelerate lead service line replacements in the Great Lakes called the Great Lakes Lead Pipes Partnership. It's going to be a remarkable program to help get lead service lines out of the ground in big cities all across the Great Lakes region. And for us, this is really, really important. It's really important because in the United States, there are roughly 9 million or so lead service lines that are still in the ground. Many of those lead services are in place in the Midwest. It's my home, it's in Chicago, it's in Detroit, it's in other cities. In fact, those 3 cities combined, there are more than 500,000 lead service lines in the ground right now. So we have to concentrate on getting those lead service lines out in those cities and other communities around the Midwest where the burden is the heaviest. And we know that that's something that's shared by President Joe Biden and certainly by Vice President Kamala Harris, who has visited Milwaukee and places all around Wisconsin to focus in on this issue of lead in water. Simply put, we can't eliminate the lead service lines in the United States without a sincere, dedicated focus on communities in the Midwest. We just cannot do it. And so that's why I'm really, really grateful. And I know that my fellow mayors are really, really grateful as well to this administration's leadership on this issue. In fact, we have been beneficiaries in my community, I'm certain in your communities as well, of the bipartisan infrastructure law and the funding that comes down from there. And really for us, it goes far beyond lead service lateral replacement, but the American Rescue Plan Act that really was a lifeline for us during COVID helped us to get through. In fact, it put us in a position where we were able to have the runway to strike a bipartisan deal with our legislature to keep our city running. It meant that much to us because we were going to fall off a fiscal cliff if that were not the case. So a lot of great investments that we've seen from the federal government as it relates to this. And it'll put us, again, in a position now with our partnership to get more lead service lines out of the ground. And with our Great Lakes Lead Pipes partnership, we'll focus on equity. That's what we've done in Milwaukee. We've got an equity plan to make sure we're focusing on neighborhoods that need to get those lead service lines out and do it in a way that serves the neighborhoods that need it. We'll be able to pull those lead service lines out, not in the 70 years that was initially projected, but do it in 20 years. Do it in 20 years because of the federal partnership that we've got with the Biden-Harris administration. In Chicago, I mean, they've seen a lot of support there. They've got a grant, or a loan rather, of hundreds of millions of dollars, over $300 million to pull lead service lines out of the ground. And over in Detroit, under Mayor Duggan's leadership, they've been able to cobble together some additional funds, over $100 million, to support removing lead service laterals out of the ground there too. But all this work is not going to be fulfilled. It's not going to be done unless we continue to have partnerships. That's why through our partnership with the Great Lakes Lead Service Line Partnership, we'll safeguard effective, equitable implementation of existing federal funds. We'll be working to make sure we share best practices with one another so we can pull those services out of the ground. And we'll also work to overcome some of the common challenges that we see on the ground in our own communities. So as you can tell, my fellow Mayor Johnson, Brandon Johnson, was not able to join us today. Mayor Mike Duggan was not able to join us as well. But we do have representatives of theirs here with us today, and I want to take a moment to highlight them. We've got Randy Connor, Chicago's Department of Water Management's Commissioner. Mr. Connor, would you please stand to be recognized? Thank you, sir. And then we have Gary Brown, the Director of the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department. So there you go. Gentlemen, thank you for being here representing both Mayor Johnson and Mayor Duggan. So we, the mayors of the Great Lakes, St. Lawrence Seaways initiatives, we look forward to continuing to collaborate closely with President Joe Biden, with Vice President Harris, with their entire administration to advance our shared mission of promoting clean, safe, and affordable water for everybody, especially those folks who live in the Midwestern Great Lakes watershed area. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Mayor Harvey?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here for such an auspicious occasion. This particular occasion is high on my list because when we talk about public safety being our #1 priority in the city of Newburgh, New York, we often think about crime, law enforcement, police, fire, first responders, but we don't think of public health as it relates to public safety. And I think that, as I say, when we broaden the context of public safety being our #1 priority, which include public health and clean drinking water and protecting our ecosystems, I think is very, very significant. City of Newburgh, New York is about 66 miles north of New York City. We are the in-between point from New York City to Albany, which is our state capital. We have roughly 28,000 to 30,000 people. We're roughly 4 square miles. We're just outside of the United States Military Academy at West Point. And we are considered a black and brown community. 53% of our population are Hispanic or Latinos. Together, African Americans and Latino make up more than 80% of our city. We're densely populated, and the median income is roughly about $40,000 in the city of Newburgh, we are an impoverished city, and looking at the majority and minority of within our city, I think that people, and we consider it as a disadvantaged community according to New York State. we had the challenge of not only fighting and doing and having an aggressive approach, a very strategic approach to our lead line service replacement program and getting the lead out of our residents' homes free of charge at no cost, have spent roughly $1.6 to $2 million in doing that. Thanks to the Biden and Harris administration, with the ARPA funds, we dedicated $1 million from our ARPA funds and then another $1 million roughly from the bipartisan infrastructure bill that the Biden and Harris administration launched boldly and broadly. And so we were very, very proud of that. When we look at the lead line replacement, we've done over 250 homes. Each home expenditure about $10 million per home, roughly, to remove those water service lines. And again, you know, when we look at the lead line replacement program, we are probably the lead in the Mid-Hudson Valley. We're on the west bank of the Hudson River. The Hudson River is an estuary. We are home to General George Washington's Hasbrook House or the Washington headquarters. We are also home to Geraldine Ferraro, the first vice presidential candidate of a major political party. We are also home to the Delano family of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And so just as we have that rich history, we also have ancient old, if you will, infrastructure. And so the city was chartered in 1865, and some of our sewer lines and our infrastructure go back to that time, which is Civil War era. And so we have had an aggressive approach to changing that infrastructure. We have about $100 million invested in our infrastructure projects. And we actually did our 50-foot tunnels with micro tunnels from the boring company so that we can filter our sewage water before we discharge into that wonderful estuary known as the Hudson River. We were dumping 50 million tons of untreated sewage at one point into the Hudson River, and that's no longer the case since I've been mayor in 2018. A good friend told me, when you know better, you do better. And if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And so when we talk about the lead line replacement program, we also were doubled down with the PFAS crisis. And when in 2016 I got elected as the councilman at large, I had been hearing stories prior to that. And you know, my phone was off the hook, and we rang the bell on the PFAS. You know, 2011 there was an article, 2014 there was an article, but 2016 I made it known, and we had to deal with that particular crisis, and that's still an ongoing thing. Our Washington Lake was contaminated from the Silver Stream, which is Wreck Pond, coming out of the Stewart Air Base, which was a military installation and still is. And so when we look at the PFAS crisis, we were doubled down with lead water service lines, PFAS, and even the COVID crisis since I've been in office as mayor. So when we talk about Newburgh, a gritty city, but you know, we are battle tested, and we're going to continue to fight for our ecosystems. Lastly, I want to say, you know, the loss of our wetlands, you know, those wetlands and those marshes in the bordering areas near our fresh water sources have to be restored and have to be protected. And so partnership again with the EPA, with our federal partners, the Biden-Harris administration, who has done unprecedented things in this particular area of our ecosystem and providing the funding. We're well ahead of our timeline for the inventory that's required and mandatory to do for all the cities around America. We're well ahead of that, and we're going to continue to fight to make sure we meet the 10-year requirement and deadline to get the lead out and to also protect our ecosystem. So thank you very much for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Harvey. Assistant Administrator, the mic's yours.
Well, first, I just want to say Mayor Johnson, Mayor Harvey, Mayor Sorensen, and Mayor Mohammed, I don't know how you do it. On day in, day out, you get up, you get out of bed, maybe you go to the grocery store to get that gallon of milk and someone stops you. Maybe it's about a stop sign, or maybe it's about the police force, or maybe it's about something else. But you all demonstrate just today and just now an intense and great understanding of the water issues that face your communities. And I can't thank you enough for the partnership that you provide EPA in getting this work done that we all know is so important to our communities. And I want to say, Director Brown and Director Connor, thank you for the work you do too. As a former resident of Detroit, I know about the city. I love that city, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate the work you're doing in that city. The partnerships that you announced today, Mayor Johnson, are tremendous, and cities will learn from one another. It's one thing to write the rules about lead and copper, and that's what we do. Sit in a building a few blocks away, write the rules, try to think of everything that you might encounter to write the best rules possible. And yet, on a day-in, day-out basis, you all are forced into ensuring that your residents are drinking clean and safe water. And it starts the minute they wake up, and you do it remarkably well. So I really, really appreciate your work. I'm honored to celebrate Earth Day with all of you folks on this panel, and specifically because we're celebrating the fundamental need of safe drinking water. We know it's not merely a resource. We know it's a lifeline that sustains communities. It preserves vital ecosystems. And recently, I've traveled around the country from one end to the other, from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine, and Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I've met all sorts of people, different backgrounds, different work, but there's one thing that unifies everybody, and that's our water and our great need for clean and safe water. And that's why I'm so excited that we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Safe Drinking Water Act this year. We know that there's been tremendous progress over the last 50 years. Over that time, we've protected our waters from over 90 contaminants and developed infrastructure investment programs that have enabled hundreds of billions of dollars in investments in our nation's public health. Yet we also know that there's a lot more work to be done. The water is a dynamic force. It's not you clean it up and you're done. We will always face challenges, and that's why when we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Safe Drinking Water Act, we remember the words of Yakima Nation Chair Gerald Lewis about the importance of clean water and access to sanitation. And we know that there are over 2.2 million people in our country today that lack access to this clean and safe water. And that's why this administration has made investing in our nation's water infrastructure the cornerstone of their agenda, delivering the single largest investment in water infrastructure in the history of this nation. $50 billion. $50 billion. Because of the bipartisan infrastructure law, better health outcomes will be held. Because not only are we funding improvements, but we're providing necessary technical assistance to disadvantaged communities across the nation who have not had access to that clean and safe water in the past. The funds that so many communities need today has been out of reach in the past. Today, we're working hard on a daily basis to make sure all communities and every American has the right to turn on the tap and drink safe and clean water like most of us do without thinking about it. And I was especially proud 2 weeks ago to join Chair Brenda Mallory and our administrator, Regan, to announce the 91st National Primary Drinking Water Regulation for PFAS. I can't underscore how proud I am to be a witness to the great work of the people in this administration and EPA to have the vision, the courage, and the know-how to use our laws as they were intended to save lives, to make our life better, and to make our economy stronger. And we're not stopping with PFAS. We're working to deliver on the president's promise that we'll finally end America's lead crisis. The bipartisan infrastructure law is going to provide money to communities like the gentleman who is seated next to me, $60 million annually for a total of $300 million for tribes to identify and remove lead service line, and then billions of dollars for communities across the United States. That's why I'm so proud and grateful to the work that you all are doing on lead service lines, because together, we're going to end this crisis, and I thank you so much for allowing me to participate.
Bruno, thank you so much. I now want to turn the mic over to Tony Spaniola.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Mary Frances. In January of this year, I came here with some other impacted PFAS citizens from around the country, including my co-chair of the Great Lakes PFAS Action Network, Sandy Winstelt, who is here with us today. And we were in this very room. Mary Frances was in this room as well. And we were here to say we need to get this drinking water standard finalized. And at that time, I said, I look forward to celebrating with you when that happens. Well, here we are, and thank you. Thank you for having us. So I'm a business lawyer from suburban Detroit. That's not why I'm here. My family owns a lake home in northern Michigan, in the community of Oscoda, the first PFAS site in Michigan and the first U.S. military PFAS site in the world. The former Ortsmith Air Force Base. The Air Force contaminated our lake, our river, our groundwater, our fish, our wildlife, and the entire biota of a substantial portion of the Huron National Forest. We can't eat a single fish from 9 miles of a formerly pristine river, and that was done through the use of PFAS-laden firefighting foam over a period of decades. More than 6 years into that investigation, after we were told not to eat our fish, more than 6 years in 2016, my family and many of our friends and neighbors were notified by the health department that it was not safe to drink our water. And I know there's other people in this room who know how that feels. It rocks your world. I can't tell you how that feels. I can tell you this, that was a call to action in our community. We formed a community action group called Need Our Water. We began connecting with other impacted communities, with scientists, with local and state elected officials, and with members of Congress. We emphasized that clean, safe drinking water is not a partisan issue. It is a moral imperative. The bipartisan Congressional PFAS Task Force was born in my community. Today, it numbers nearly 60 members of the United States House of Representatives. With other defense-impacted communities, we reached out to President Biden. Through CEQ, he heard us. Sarah Gonzalez-Rothy, I remember that first meeting when you listened to our stories of personal loss, devastation, and tragedy, and you shared your tears and sorrow with us. Then you took action. arranging a series of meetings for us with President Biden's appointed Undersecretary of Defense, William LaPlante. And Chair Mallory, you're here today, and I want to thank you personally for the great work that your staff has done in working with us. As a result of those meetings, the interim action cleanup strategy that our community group developed in Oscoda is now being implemented by the Air Force there. More importantly, the strategy became a blueprint for a national policy directive issued by the Pentagon to all military bases across the country. That's what happens when you have forward-looking leadership in the Biden administration. Most importantly of all, and it's been talked about here before, but President Biden delivered on his campaign promise when the EPA announced national drinking water standards for 6 PFAS chemicals and declared 2 of them hazardous substances under CERCLA. This is a monumental victory for the American people. President Biden and his administration stood up for public health, stood up for sound science, and stood up to powerful special interests to do the right thing. Those drinking water standards will save the lives of countless Americans for generations to come. Communities like mine across the country take this moment to thank the Biden administration, the EPA, everyone in this room who was involved. Bruno, everyone on your staff, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We know that there's much more work to be done, and we stand ready to walk arm in arm with all of you to make these standards a reality, to continue to take important steps to tackle the PFAS crisis, and to do what just happened, to continue to do what just happened, to make government work for all of us. Thank you all.
I want to go ahead and thank the panel for all their wonderful presentations. And, Mayor Harvey.
Yeah, I just want to, I'd be remiss not to mention that as the old ancient Chinese proverb, it takes many hands and many minds to accomplish one goal. And so I don't do this alone. I have a team. I got to give a shout out to Tim Mail from EPIC, which is the Environmental Policy Initiative Center, along with Maureen Cunningham. They're here today. I didn't give them a shout out. Our Commissioner of Public Works, Jason Morris, is back home. He's a very, very smart guy, and he's doing amazing work. In addition to our water superintendent, Wayne Vanderberg. If I don't give them that shout out before, I can't go back home because, and our city manager, Todd Venning. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, we're deeply grateful for all of you and the perspectives that you shared, what you're doing in your communities, for your communities, with the partnership of the EPA and this administration. It's really been inspiring, I think, to all of us this afternoon. Thank you so much.
So last week, I was stress eating, and my stress eating of choice is usually fruit, but on that day it was really bad, and so it was a chocolate. And on the inside of the chocolate wrapper, it said, "Don't quit until you're proud." And I am proud, but don't quit. I beg you, don't quit. I call my team Team Water, but today I've started calling my team and this whole room Team Heart. And part of Team Heart that I get to introduce next has a special day today, even outside of the White House Water Summit, because today in the Federal Register is the HUD, Federal Flood Risk Management Standard, which she says she's worked on for years, which I can't really believe because I guess she started when she was Kia and Ruby's age. She previously worked at the Department of Housing and Urban Development as an expert in green and energy efficient affordable housing. And so please help me welcome Crystal Bergman, Senior Director for Resilience at CEQ.
Thank you, Sarah, for that introduction, and huge thanks to Sarah and the whole water team for this amazing day. It's been really wonderful to participate and be here and just learn from everybody here. So we've got one last panel standing between us and cookies, but I promise it's going to be amazingly worth it. So as I introduce them, I'll just invite the panelists to come up here now, so we can save some time. We've had such a great discussion of the amazing work that's happening throughout the country in partnership with this administration to protect and restore our freshwater resources. And as we discussed earlier this morning, protecting and reconnecting these vital resources is so important and ensures that our landscapes, our communities are more resilient to an ever-changing climate and will ensure clean drinking water and more for all Americans. We know how important it is to protect communities from things like flood and future climate risks like water, flood, and drought through things like the implementation of the Federal Flood Risk Management Standard that HUD announced today. But now we get a chance to delve more into the details and a little bit more into water resources and how they're impacting our communities that are facing these impacts of climate change. Whether it's drought in the West or flooding or drought in the Mississippi region, groundwater depletion, wildfires in the forests, floodings in the coasts or inlands, our communities are doing the work to protect, to reconnect, to conserve our resources, to reduce those impacts and become more resilient to those impacts of climate, all while protecting clean water, reconnecting tribal nations with sacred waters, and advancing a climate agenda. So just a couple of things that people are doing at the same time. With that, I'm delighted to introduce our panelists. Like I said, I promise you it'll be worth it between now and cookies. So first we have Governor Stephen Roe Lewis, Chair of the Gila River Indian Community, who will speak about the exciting work that the tribe is doing to pilot a clean energy water conservation project in Indian country. Next, we'll hear from Mayor Belinda Constant of Gretna, Louisiana. Welcome, Mayor. Mayor Constant will share with us her town's experience with impacts from drought in the Mississippi region and innovative nature-based solutions and projects they're working on with their fellow cities in the Mississippi Rivers and Towns initiative to address those issues. We've heard some other mayors today. I'm very delighted, in addition to having Mayor Constant on our panel, I also want to recognize we're honored to be joined at the summit today by additional mayors, including Mayor George Flaggs from Vicksburg, Mississippi, and Mayor Scott Madison from Clinton, Iowa, both on the front lines of this work. On the Mississippi River. Next, we have Commissioner Camille Touton from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, who will highlight key efforts that Reclamation has been spearheading on all of these fronts, from addressing drought to conserving water to furthering clean energy in connection with tribal partners. Next, we have Amy Cordalis, attorney with the Yurok tribe and executive director of the Ridges to Riffles group. She will discuss how the reconnection of the Klamath River is both a physical restoration effort as well as a cultural one. We heard some of that earlier today as well. And then finally, Andrew Folland, Senior Program Officer with the Water Foundation, will help pull this event all together, share some ideas, especially used by the state of California, to get water where it needs to be to increase resiliency. So without further ado, we'll get started. We'll do a quick brief minute or so introduction from each of our panelists, and then we'll go into a quick round of questions. So Governor Lewis, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, and Skugtash, Anya Anapchugak, Governor Stephen Roe Lewis, Amjad, Guaki, Saskatoon, Gila River Indian Community. It's truly an honor. Thank you to the tribal leaders for just your wonderful experiences and your comments about the significance of water, the amazing work that's being done along the Klamath River. Amazing. I want to get a video now. I got to do a video. I got to do my own video of the Kudiyakama of the Gila River. Amazing, Vice Chair. Thank you, Chairman Lewis. I'm Governor Lewis, so Chairman Lewis, no relation, but water truly connects us all, and I think that's the narrative that we're learning. I'm geeking out of everyone's stories here. Amazing. But I come from the beautiful Sonoran Desert, what we call Otham Juvat in southern Arizona. Of course, we just hit 100 degrees for the first time just a couple of days ago, so we are well on the way of what we're seeing earlier. We're seeing, as was said, we are facing climate change every day. All of us are. And I think the story that I want to bring has to do with when underserved communities, great messages, great leadership from our local, our mayors as well, is that when we're at the table, when we have the resources, when we have the support and we have unprecedented historic support from the Biden-Harris administration, we can bring true innovation and bring solutions to this historic time that we're at, this critical time that we're at, this existential challenge that we have before us, which is climate change. And what I see for the Gila River Indian community, I see, and we've been able to address through true partnerships with this administration, especially with my good friend, Commissioner Camille Tootin from the Bureau of Reclamation, who knows sovereignty, who understands tribal sovereignty as well. And when you have partners like this in the federal government, there's really nothing that you can't accomplish together in a respectful way. What I wanted to talk about, well, we could talk about so many things, but I want to talk about just really quickly our solar covered canal project. If I can just go right into that really fast. I was at the first tribal leaders White House meeting back in November of 2021 when we unveiled this on behalf of the Gila River Indian community. We had heard about this a project being done in India, right, across the other side of the world. And we're thinking this is a no-brainer here in Arizona among the Gila River Indian community, where we have over 150 miles of canals. Where we just look at ways where we can bring innovation. We come from the Hugam civilization, which over 1,000 years ago, they built state-of-the-art, sophisticated canal systems on a par with the Egyptian canals in the Nile Valley. And this is the blueprint for what's modern-day Phoenix. This is who our relationship, our DNA is with. And so when you bring science, yes, go science. When you bring, all right? When you bring science together with indigenous ecological knowledge, you'll find true innovation. And this is what we're all trying to bring together. So to move forward, we have worked with the White House, with the Bureau of Reclamation, with the Army Corps of Engineers, and hopefully with, as we look at an all-of-government approach, where we have been able to come to this pilot project for solar panels over canals, which what it'll do, what we're hoping, and in fact, we are looking at first placing our first solar panels in May 12th of this next month, and first power in early September. And we're looking at within a half a mile. Yes, thank you. Our first half a mile, looking at generating 1 megawatt of energy, and we have over 150 more miles. So we're looking at just in an incredible amount of potential in expanding this project. We had a great meeting with President Biden when he, as part of the incredible CHIPS legislation, where he is in the White House having a tremendous partnership with Intel. Intel, the plant that he visited, where $8 billion is going to go to innovation and technology. That's on our northern border of our reservation. And so we're looking at a potential partnership with Intel in providing both energy and water, potentially from this project, as we start to ramp this up to scale. So, there are many firsts in what we're looking at. And when we look at this historic funding, again, from this all-of-government approach, having the deputy secretary from EPA here, and the amount of funding there, I think for Indian country, what we're looking at is a potential groundbreaking and truly innovative project that hopefully that we can look at as a best practice where other tribes can also learn from as well. And that's something that we look at as a win-win in tackling climate change every day and where we're facing. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much, Governor Lewis. A lot to be proud of, big accomplishment coming up. Next, Mayor Constant, please, I'll ask you to introduce yourself, but also I would love to understand a little bit more about the group of over 100 mayors, the Mississippi Rivers and Town Coalition, and this really innovative path that you're taking forward, looking at nature-based solutions instead of just gray infrastructure.
Thank you so much. And again, I just want to say thank you to President Biden and the team here at CEQ for the invitation for us to be a part of this. And yes, as you said, I am mayor of Gretna, Louisiana, a municipality right across the Great Mississippi from New Orleans. But I am here also representing the Association of MRCTI, an association of 105 mayors along the Mississippi stem and 10 states. As we had 2 mayors introduced earlier who are also with me, and Colin Wellenkamp, who is the executive director, and thank you. We've heard lots today about the Great Lakes. We've heard about the rivers in California, not so much about the Mississippi. But it's critical to talk about the Mississippi River and the part it plays sustaining life in Middle America and beyond, right? So the mayors on the Mississippi are one voice, one river, and we come together, much like we're doing today, because everything that affects the upper Mississippi at some point will impact me in the most southern part of the state of Louisiana. As most of you already know, that the majority of the world's food is produced in river basins, including the great rivers of the world and, of course, the Mississippi River. But climate impacts today that we've talked about all day long are damaging the freshwater resources of our nation and the world that we depend on. Since 2005, the Mississippi River corridor has sustained over $246 billion in actual losses due to climate disasters. The first one I can attest to, sworn in 6 weeks right before Katrina hit the state of Louisiana and the city of New Orleans. And the way we look at natural disasters changed in this country because of that. The Mississippi River Basin is a unique position to lead on climate performance because our basin produces 78% of the global export supply of feed grains and soybeans, the largest navigable basin in the world, and 1 in every 12 people worldwide will consume commodities produced in the Mississippi River Basin. Not to mention 20+ million people withdraw water from that river every day to sustain life. The freshwater economy of the Mississippi River sustains over $400 billion in annual revenue, directly supporting 1 million jobs in manufacturing, tourism, agriculture, and 5 additional economies. The risk to America's freshwater resources is systemic in nature, covering vast regions of the continent. And solutions to climate impacts must be deployed at the same scale as the impacts themselves. The most important priority in this partnership is establishing large-scale, multi-state, multi-city regional approaches, much like MRCTI, in order that projects that apply solutions at corridor, watershed, and basin scale will survive. This is exactly why there are 104 of us, including myself, 105, that agree we have to work together with one river, one message, to get the necessary results to ensure sustainability of Middle America and beyond. Beginning now and over the next several years, MRCTI and Global Conservation Authority, Ducks Unlimited, are deploying the largest non-federal pipeline of natural infrastructure projects on the Mississippi. And Ducks Unlimited representative is with us here today. We're pretty excited to be able to announce that. Together, we will activate over 100 acres of natural infrastructure through climate absorption lands, assisting around 9 states, 45 cities. This is also with the assistance of DU. MRCTI and DU have secured an IRA grant for natural infrastructure in Davenport and Bettendorf, and a DOT grant out of the Jobs Act for Memphis and West Memphis, Arkansas. These assets will sequester more than 230,000 tons of carbon in the near term and an additional 320,000 tons through projects obligated by 2030. This will get President Biden nearly 30% closer to meeting the U.S. NDC non-power sector requirements. Some of these nature-based assets we are deploying at corridor scale include forest, wetlands, marshes, reconnected floodplain, and reconnected backwater reaches. So with that, I just want to say in closing, we would like to again say thank you for being able to bring this conversation about the Mississippi River and the things that we are coordinating with this administration, as well as Ducks Unlimited and the mayors across these 10 states. Thank you for letting us share this message about focusing on the reality of clean water and the role that Mississippi River plays in that conversation. Thank you.
Commissioner, your team, I don't think your team ever sleeps. Stemming the tide of a new serious disaster in the Colorado River. Today you announced with the Indian Health Service a new partnership, $1 billion to address clean water. Also today, $500 million to assist communities in the West who are experiencing mega droughts. So many accomplishments. I'll turn it over to you to talk about challenges and successes.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be at the Water Summit. Thank you for the White House for hosting us, Chair Mallory. This is a fantastic event. I'm so proud to be on this panel of distinguished panelists, but folks that I get to call my partners, but more importantly, my friends. My name is Camille Klimlam-Tootin, and I have the privilege of serving as the Commissioner of the United States Bureau of Reclamation. Let me tell you why the Bureau of Reclamation, to those east of the Mississippi, is the federal agency that you didn't know you ever needed. So first, the Bureau of Reclamation was founded almost 122 years ago. We operate west of the Mississippi, the 100th meridian. Our goals, our mission, is to deliver water and produce power. And today, we are the largest water deliverer in the nation and the second largest producer of hydropower. And so if you've had a glass of water in Phoenix, if you've had a salad this winter, it came from Imperial and Yuma Valley. If you have had a beer in Washington State, most likely hops from the Yakima Project, and hello, Chairman Lewis. If you've also had fruits and nuts and vegetables, we are proud of our ability to feed the nation with 10 million acres of irrigated agriculture across the West. But as we've grown as a country, so has our communities. We serve as water deliverers to some of the largest economies in the world. We have a trust responsibility to sovereign nations, including 30 sovereign nations who call the Colorado River system home. And we have a responsibility to protect the ecosystem. But our largest reservoir is not Hoover Dam. It's not Glen Canyon Dam. Our largest reservoir is snowpack. And so when you look at our mission, in light of climate change and aridification, what we are seeing across the West is something we haven't seen in past. Snow is at higher elevations. It might be melting sooner. When it melts, it runs off faster because the soils are dry. And you're seeing that as less runoff into our rivers and reservoirs. And the demand for that one drop of water has increased as we've gone into this century. But thanks to our people, the 5,400 people who call the West home, who live in these communities, but our partnerships and also the investments with President Biden's Investing of America agenda, we've been able to continue to meet our mission even in the most challenging times. Let me give you a few highlights. One that you might have heard about often is the Colorado River system. When we walked into the door, the reservoirs of Glen Canyon and Hoover Dam were at the lowest since filling. At one point, 25% of capacity for a 60 million acre foot system. So we needed to work quickly and deploy resources given to us as part of the Inflation Reduction Act to be able to stabilize these systems. And what we were able to accomplish actually almost a year ago today was a record 3 million acre-feet of conservation in the Colorado River system. And most importantly, the first system conservation agreement was with a sovereign nation, with my friend, Governor Lewis, and the Gila River Indian community. So thank you, Governor. So today we are at 1.7 million acre-feet of that 3 million acre-feet goal, and we're going to hit that target. And we've been able to now stabilize the system to focus on the future. What are the operations of the future for the Colorado River? And that's just one basin we operate in. You'll hear from my colleagues here today about others, whether it's California or the Klamath Basin. But part of that, too, is this generational investment that we keep talking about with the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act. Let me give you real examples of that in real life. There's one project called the Arkansas Valley Conduit. It's in southern Colorado. This project was dedicated by Kennedy. They needed a water supply because their groundwater has naturally occurring radionuclides. And last year, we broke ground on phase 1 of the Boone Reach project of the Arkansas Valley Conduit. And this year, we're going to complete that phase 1 project. People waiting 60 years, now we can say phase 1. You know, I really like shovel events, but I like ribbon cuttings better. We also are helping to serve rural water communities. The Fort Peck Dry Prairie is one that we're also looking to complete later this year. Not only are we looking at infrastructure and building it better, like BF-CISC in the Central Valley of California, so we're investing $100 million for seismic retrofits. We're building it taller to be able to capture all of those atmospheric rivers that we're seeing across the West so that we can re-engineer and reimagine systems that have been built last century for the next century. And part of this, too, is the Inflation Reduction Act that we talked about today, the ability to conserve 1.7 million acre-feet. But something that I'm incredibly proud of as we look to our partnerships, and more importantly, our partnerships across the West, is how we partner with sovereign nations. It was announced today, the agreement that we have with the Indian Health Service. Thank you to the Yakama Nation for partnering with us. And we also have currently $320 million in a notice of funding opportunity for domestic water supplies specific to sovereign nations. Something we heard about that was a barrier for our partners in this effort was the cost share. And also there was different levels of needs. There are needs from a technical capability, feasibility study, and construction. And this notice of funding opportunity is a fundamental shift on how the Bureau of Reclamation works with sovereign nations to build these projects. And I'm incredibly proud of that. But most importantly, something that I've had the privilege to do across the West and I don't take for granted is the opportunity to be invited into our partners' homes. One thing that was asked of us on the Colorado River was that sovereign nations be included at the table. And one thing we were able to do 101 years after the compact was have the first Fed States Tribes partnership, 30 sovereign nations, 7 basin states, and the federal government sitting together. But the most incredible opportunity is not that we have seats at the table, is that we are invited to sit at theirs. And so later this week, I'll have the opportunity with Secretary Holland, who says hello, to be able to be in the Colorado River Basin to meet with our sovereign nations and to be able to really see what water and life means to them in their part of the world. I'm incredibly proud of the work we've done together collectively, and we're not done yet. And so stay tuned for more of our work as we look to advance all of these investments, as we look to operations for the future, but certainly to solidify these partnerships that are important for the success of the American West. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today.
We'll turn now to Amy Cordalis from the Yurok tribe. The Yurok tribe, along with the Klamath tribe, chose to jump in and lead an effort to reconnect the Klamath River, to restore and reconnect the river. Can you share how the removal of the dam and restoration of the watershed can affect tribal people and the resilience of the region?
Thank you. And let's see. Hello? All right, there we go. Ayakui, Neknau, Amy Cordalis, Nuwak, Rekwoi, Numite, Wa, Waklao. What a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you to the White House CEQ for the invitation. It's been just an honor. First, let me start a little bit with Yurok. So my family is from the mouth of the Klamath River, from the village of Rekwoi, and we've been there since the beginning of time. We've never been relocated, we've never moved, and like many other Yurok families, we have always been on the river practicing our fishing way of life. The Yurok tribe is currently the largest California tribe. Our ancestral territory includes about 1.5 million acres in what is now called Northern California. So the coastal areas of the North Coast, the Redwood, and what is now Parkland, the lower 45 miles of the Klamath River, and then our sacred high country up in the First Coastal Range. That's our Aboriginal territory. And we enjoyed a fishing way of life that was supported by all the different resources in those different environments. Our reservation was created in 1855, which reduced our territory to just the lower Klamath River, lower 45 miles, a mile on either side of the river. Let's see, I think it was one of the mayors, you said earlier that you've had, pipes and water infrastructure since the time of the Civil War. We still don't have it. We still don't have running water. We still don't have pipes. We still don't have even running water to some of our schools within our reservation. So that development never happened. Our annual income on the reservation is $11,000. $11,000 annual income. We have survived from the river, right? Historically, there were ample salmon runs, there were elk, there were deer, there were roots, there were berries. And so we were able to, continue a decent sort of lifestyle for a long time. But then the salmon runs started to, diminish. We saw a loss in elk and deer. We saw some of our other cultural natural resources that weren't able to grow and flourish because there wasn't enough water or because there was some pollutants coming from other places. And so recently it's been very tough. Things sort of all came to what I would say, a real tragedy in 2002. When, and since I'm in the White House, I'm going to explain it this way, when Vice President Cheney chose to divert an extreme amount of water from the headwaters of the Klamath River to support agriculture. And as a result, at the bottom part of the river on my reservation, it was the lowest flows ever recorded in history on the Klamath River, right when a very big, very healthy fall Chinook salmon run returned to the river. And the result was the largest fish kill in American history. Over 78,000 adult salmon died within the boundaries of my reservation. They died from a fish disease called ick that essentially, spreads in really bad water, hot temperatures, polluted waters, and it suffocates them. They literally can't breathe and it attacks their gills. By the end of the fish kill, their carcasses lined the sides of the river 3-4 layers deep, and their bodies were rotting. And it smelled like a war zone. It looked like a war zone. And me, along with Vice Chair Myers and several other Yurok people, on the river during that time, looked and thought, this is an act of ecocide against my people. This is an act of colonization that is occurring in 2002. We are still at war with the US government. That is how it felt. And also, we knew that the management of the Klamath Basin could no longer tolerate this sort of out of balanced, and I'll say it this way, pro-business, pro-extraction type of policies and management. And so our tribal leadership got together and had some real hard conversations about what are we going to do so that we, as the Yurok people, have a future, but more importantly, so that this river, so that all the different people and communities who have come in since we've been here have a future. And what's really cool about, so I'm a lawyer, right? I'm also a tribal member, but I get to work with tribal leadership that have amazing vision. Our tribal leadership knew what the Klamath looked like pre-development, right? They had that traditional knowledge. Some people call that traditional ecological knowledge. I think it's broader than that. It's traditional knowledge about how ecosystems worked naturally pre-development. And so we dove into that. The Yurok tribe also employs the second highest amount of biologists and scientists in the whole state of California, second to only California. And what we did was we married that traditional vision, right? That traditional knowledge of our leaders with modern science. And the EPA administrator, if you're still there, yes, go best available science. But what is so powerful is when you marry that best available science with the traditional knowledge, and that is what can uplift us out of all these ecological crises, right? That's what we did at Yurok. And what we realized was that the Klamath Basin was essentially divided in two by the dams, right? And so if we were going to restore the river, if we were going to ensure our own future, we had to remove those dams. So how do you do that? Well, you make a lot of friends and you make a lot of partners, right? So essentially what we did, and this is, I think, one of the things I really want to share with everyone is about what I'm going to say. So we entered into the Klamath Hydroelectric Settlement Agreement, the KHSA. That is a $550 billion agreement to remove 4 dams on the Klamath River, also to restore the habitat alongside the river in what will be the largest river restoration project in history. And I am very pleased to report that despite that ambitious task, we are on schedule, on budget, and completely within all of our existing permits. So we are, yes. Already we have removed 1.5 dams. We have blown tunnels in the bottom of the remaining 3. So the river is running through these tunnels, and the reservoirs behind the dams have been drawn down. And the reservoirs are huge, like 1,000-acre reservoirs. And within those reservoirs, the river has already found her way. She has already rechannelized and is beautiful, breathtaking. And I encourage everyone to go to the Ridges to Riffles Indigenous Conservation Group website, and you can see pictures of how the river is. It's really just phenomenal. Removing those dams, restoring the river will rebuild the Klamath ecosystem. The Klamath used to be the 3rd largest salmon-producing river in all of the lower continental U.S. We are down to 1 to 3% of the historical salmon runs. 1 to 3%, right? So those dams cannot come out fast enough. But by removing those dams, we will restore those historic salmon runs. Those will support, of course, the tribal fisheries that are dependent upon those runs, but also the commercial fisheries within both Oregon and California and Washington. It will also help the ecosystem generally support agriculture up at the top of the basin, recreation, so on and so forth. It represents hope and future and everything that is really good in the world. One thing I wanted to point out too is that at UROC, we declared personhood rights for the Klamath River under tribal law. So, thank you. And it was the first river in North America to enjoy personhood rights. And essentially what that does is it gives the river legal standing in UROC courts, right? So it expands the amount of legal protection available to the river. And we did that because at UROC, from our worldview, the river is a relative, right? She is alive. She is, comprehensive and has a full variety of systems that work together, to function just like we do as humans. And for a very long time, she has been providing for us, sustaining all of these different communities, agriculture, fishing, recreation. But for a long time, under that kind of regime, she's been suffering. One of the other things to share is water flows. So the river's been operating on what we call minimum flows required by the Endangered Species Act. And sometimes she would go for like 300 days like that. And that for us, when you look at the river as a person, it's almost like being on life support, right? So think about how well are you able to care for your family if you were on life support? You couldn't, right? You can't take care of your family if you're on life support. And that's how our river has been for a really long time. So by removing the dams, by putting water back in the river, by tapping into some of the bill funding, the IRA funding to restore the river, we can make her healthy again. And when she is healthy, she can then take care of all of us better, right? And that's like the fundamental value of what nature-based solutions are. Right? If you think about it. So we will restore those natural ecological functions by removing those dams, by getting water in the river, and then by tapping into all this great funding available for restoration. So it is really a model of how we can recover from, from a tribal perspective of colonization, of industrialization of our water resources, right? And tribes are a key partner to all of that because we have that vision of how things used to work. I want to acknowledge that David Gover from the Native American Rights Fund is in the room today, and NARF has been a key partner. Yep. A key partner in Indian country in making sure that tribes' treaty rights, but also water rights are recognized. This is a really important issue in the U.S. There are over, 573 federally recognized Indian tribes. About probably 30 of those tribes have had their water rights recognized. That's a problem. So we need to recognize the water rights of the First Nations, of the tribes. And then the last point I'll make is I think one of the real lessons from the Klamath and how we've been able to do all of this work is in our agreements, in our work with states, with our work with power companies, with our other partners, we were able to put on equal value the rights of business, the rights of nature, and the rights of indigenous peoples and tribes. And think about how different that is from sort of just a standard quo business operation, right? So as we move forward and we think about how we can take advantage of all this great investment that the Biden administration is making in water, We need to take the approach of equally valuing, business, nature, indigenous people. And I think that's the path forward of how we get to equity, right? So I'll close by making one final point. I'm also a mother of 3, and I do frequently watch Frozen 2. And there was a point made earlier that the water remembers. I think we also remember. We remember in our ancestral blood what it was like to live on a healthy planet with clean, cool water. And I'm really pleased to be sitting here in partnership with all of you, in partnership with the Biden administration, to bring that gut core feeling we have about what it was like to be a human on a healthy planet with clean water back to life, so that our future generations can enjoy that good way, right? So thank you, Waklau.
Thank you so much for those powerful words. And last but not least, I'll turn it to Andrew Fallon from the Water Foundation to tie in the day's conversation, given your expertise and experience, some common threads you've seen.
Well, I don't know what I did to deserve going after Amy Cordalis, because that, she's always one to drop the mic, and but I'll do the best I can, and she's actually a board member of mine, so I get to rib her a little bit.
Okay.
Way around. Oh, okay. First of all, my name is Andrew Folland, and I'm with the Water Foundation, and I work in philanthropy, so that means that I get to give money away to causes like all the ones that we've been hearing about today, and I get to observe the incredible efforts of people all across the country who are in community with one another, trying to do better. And that's just an incredibly inspiring and privileged place to be. It's also it can also feel daunting, and I think we're hearing that duality in all the presentations that we have heard today. We're at a really sobering time in our lives and in the lives of this planet, and we all have this understanding of it through water, those of us in this room, and I think actually most people do, and that gives us an opportunity, and I think that gives us a power and a strength to really dig in and find ways to connect with one another. I heard a lot of reference over the last a few hours about that kind of connection, and I was jotting down sort of phrases and lessons and so forth. I mean, Chairman Lewis started us off with water is life, right? And that is something we've all heard, but I think we actually have to, let it sink in a little bit more and get it deeper. It can't just be sort of an intellectual enterprise. It's got to be coming from the heart and the spirit. And I think that's something that we learn from our indigenous leaders in particular. I was also thinking a little bit about how there's an expression I heard once that we'd all be better off if we thought like a mayor. Because mayors and other elected leaders who are in those kinds of positions, they have to be dealing with all of it all the time, right? It's just a constant churn, and so they're constantly looking for those opportunities to solve more than one problem at a time. And when we're dealing with our water challenges, we've heard it again and again all throughout the day. We've got to actually be tackling these things not just in silos, not just in individual actions, but in collective actions. I think the Biden-Harris administration, with the investments that they've put out in the field, with the kinds of policy choices that they've been making, have really taken that idea to heart and really understand that we can't just, pick off slices. We've got to take it on in bigger pieces than that, and that's how mayors think, and that's how we all need to think. And I think we also have to think about balance, Frankie mentioned balance right off the bat, and I think we have to think about how we balance the needs that we have for our entire society. I mean, we have for far too long lacked balance. We've lacked balance by leaving entire populations out, leaving people out of the decision-making, by leaving nature out of the equation. We have to actually find balance that is actually meaningful and equitable, and not just go along the way we've been going along. We've got to overcome some of those historic inequities in particular. I loved Reed Wilson's reference to optimism. I am optimistic. I think if I as an environmentalist, as a person who tries to be a good ally, I am optimistic. I have to be, and I think all of you are as well. And I think water gives us that opportunity to find actual solutions. There are real solutions to the problems that we're facing. We just have to find the political will. We have to find the resources. We have to find each other to get to those solutions. And so, certainly from the foundation community, from the philanthropic community, we see our responsibility. We definitely see the importance of supporting civil society to actually engage on these issues. I want to actually just give a shout out to the federal civil servants who are with us and who have just done such an amazing job. I mean, I think they go unsung for far too often, and as do all of you. But I just want to end by sort of thinking about the ability that we all have as a community to make things better and to commit to just getting out there and doing it. So those are my reflections.
Thank you. A round of applause for all of our panelists here before we move to our last speaker. Thank you.
Can I say something really fast? I think this is such a moment here, and hearing just all of the powerful remarks here, I think we can't leave here without being moved, without being changed in some way, right? With the knowledge, with the testimony, that was shared here. I mean, the incredible work that all the tribal leaders, the attorneys along the Klamath River, because I have to say this, I think there is a moral and ethical dimension to this as well, having to do with the leadership once we leave here. Because for the Gila River Indian community, our water, or what we call our Kutiakamo, our Gila River, was stolen from us over 150 years ago. So we know what it means to be pushed to the brink of extinction over 150 years ago, where our river ran dry. And so we know exactly, just how serious where we're at this moment right now along the Colorado River. We see, the falling elevations. We see stressed out rivers, and to have personhood being gifted, being linked now to rivers. I think that is an amazing, innovative, moral and ethical, I think, gift that our indigenous people, our leaders here, have gifted us. Because, you know what, we are going to see and we're going to be confronted with some serious decisions, eminently. And for underserved communities and for tribal nations, sometimes it's at our sacrifices, what we've seen over and over again. And so there are some critical times that we're going to be faced with, but I think what we see here is we see an administration that desires, that respects partnerships, and respects the history behind what has gotten us here to where we're at today, and to have that moral, that ethical leadership to make these hard decisions with respect to everything that we are at a nation, at a region level, at a tribal level. So thank you very much. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you
So
so
we've
much.
heard about grievous injustice, and we've also heard about unbridled optimism, and I hope you leave today with the latter. Happy Earth Day every day, and happy Passover to those who celebrate. Our final speaker traveled to D.C. in his senior year of high school to represent Pennsylvania in the U.S. Senate Youth Program, and I think his teachers probably agree it was a worthwhile trip. He is undoubtedly a renewable energy expert, but I think you'll find he's a source of renewable energy unto himself. So to close out this wonderful day, it's my pleasure to welcome Ali Zaidi, who today serves as Assistant to the President and National Climate Advisor, leading the White House Climate Policy Office. Ali, bring it home.
I am very sadly no longer in my senior year of high school. and very envious of those who are. Look, we are all so familiar with that image of the blue marble. And I think it lulls us into thinking we've got all the water we need to live and to prosper. But when we go to the rivers, to the lakes, to the wells around which we've grown up, the places of such great significance, not just to our economy and to things that show up on a spreadsheet, but to cultural transmission, to ways of life, that's all drying up. And it's drying up in a way that is more fierce and more forceful than other parts of a nature that is in distress and in strain. And of course, I use drying up euphemistically to capture too much water, too little water, water that's not clean enough, water that's been fouled on purpose or through negligence. There are a lot of water problems, but maybe to the prompt, I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic about our ability to come together in the face of all of this and deliver, not just for this moment, but for the generations that come behind us, the actual high school students. As an administration, I think we've benefited so much in our partnership with you as we've looked to take on the challenge of a powerful and persistent drought that's locked up our West. And we've found a way forward only because we found a way to come together. We look at the Northwest, and I think this was the testament from a previous speaker, and harnessing indigenous knowledge, harnessing the power of partnership, we found a way forward. When we look at a problem, now I will use my relative youth. I was born the year they decided to ban lead pipes, new lead pipes. But I'm pretty old, and it took them a really long time to figure out how to get the ones that were already there out. And in the years that followed, a bunch of kids grew up with cognitive challenges, grown up into older folks who carry around a health burden that society put on them. We're going to get those lead pipes out because we are coming together. I'll close out where Brenda and I had the privilege of flying to Virginia, which normally you drive to, so my bad. With the President of the United States yesterday, and we were going to see that fount of inspiration that I think motivates so many of us, and from whom you've all heard today, young people who are raising their hand, wanting to join the American Climate Corps. And on the way, the president turned to us and he said, we're reflecting on what FDR said when he launched the Civilian Climate Corps. And the president underlined the word moral. And he said, so easily we fall into environmental shorthand or economic algorithms, reducing both the challenge and the opportunity to something so menial. This is a chance for moral uplift. And you think about what anyone who's ever been to space, and I have yet to go, maybe that's the next flight. But you think about the first folks who went to space, what they remarked when they saw that blue marble. It was a sense of a moral dimension that they saw, and the privilege and the sacred trust that we're all given. Water is the medium through which we feel the fiercest of the climate crisis, the droughts, the floods, the hurricanes, but it's also the medium, I think, through which we can feel a sense of moral uplift and a chance to come together. So I'm very grateful to Chair Mallory, to this entire team that's helped bring us together, to our partners across the interagency who are your partners shoulder to shoulder. But I'm most grateful to you for your partnership, to being together with us, to seizing this moment. Very, very grateful. Thank you.
Friends and yet to be, that's it. Let's get to work. I'm supposed to say cookies outside.